Chapter 2143. This was a very spacious room, but it was extremely dark. There was almost no light in the room. The structure of the room was shaped like a fan. In the deepest part of the room, there was a large number of holographic screens stacked together, forming a futuristic scene. In the room, the only source of light was the holographic screens. On the screens, the numbers displayed in the form of bars were rapidly changing. Only the largest display in the center of the room showed a map. Noah and Rintaro immediately recognized the map. It was a map of the Tokyo area. "The two of you, please come in with me," Toshiro said as he led Noah and Rintaro into this futuristic room. Looking around, Noah asked curiously, "What is this place?" If I were to summarize it in one sentence, it would be the control room that manages the electricity. Toshiro smiled meaningfully. "At least this is what it looks like on the surface." On the surface? Rintaro turned around and looked at Toshiro. "In other words, there is another purpose for this place?" "Yes," Toshiro explained. "I'm sure the two of you know that electricity must be transmitted through high voltage and power lines to reach the final destination. But in this way, when the electricity is sent to an ordinary home, there will be a serious loss of electricity, which will lead to excessive waste, right? Moreover, there are also examples of large databases that require a large amount of power to be idle, in order to prevent the server from overloading or a rapid increase in the amount of data. Only a portion of the power is used, and the rest is wasted." Toshiro pointed at the monitor in front of him. This system is used to monitor the usage of energy, and under the premise of avoiding power outages, efficiently transmit and distribute the appropriate amount of electricity. Based on this idea, the first generation of shonen started to build this place. But since it has already been built to this scale, isn't it a bit wasteful to just use it to manage the electricity? Noah very casually interjected. So, while managing the electricity, it is necessary to have some other functions such as managing the surveillance cameras in the Tokyo area, right? As expected of President Noah. Toshiro shrugged helplessly. "That's right. If you're here, you'll be able to see the footage captured by all the surveillance cameras in Tokyo." "All of them?" Ryutaro couldn't help but be flabbergasted. "No wonder there are so many monitors here." "That's not right, Ryutaru," Noah corrected Ryutaru. "If this place can really monitor the entire Tokyo area, then the number of monitors here is too small. After all, the number of surveillance cameras in the entire Tokyo area was simply unimaginable. Stations, airports, banks, and other important facilities aside, the Tokyo area and even other areas were mostly equipped with surveillance cameras. This was because some of the protozoa might slip into the human's residence through the gaps in the magnetic field released by the giant stone monument, and bring about a protozoa virus infection that was even more terrifying than the plague. In order to prevent the invasion of the protozoa and wipe them out at any time and place, every area was equipped with many surveillance cameras. Almost the entire area was monitored. Of course, when the number of surveillance cameras increased, it was almost impossible to know what was happening in every corner of an area at all times. If one were to take the Tokyo area as an example, the number of surveillance cameras here could be described as tens of thousands. With so many surveillance cameras, if someone were to manage them, who knew how much manpower it would take to manage all of them? So, it became necessary to use an AI system to manage the surveillance cameras, and this place was born. Toshiro seemed to be very impressed by Noah's sharp thinking. He stepped forward and walked to the large number of monitors. There were some staff members in front of these monitors. Toshiro whispered a few words to the staff members. The staff members nodded and began to operate. The next moment, the map of the Tokyo area on the central monitor began to be simplified and gradually expanded. Finally, it shrank into an area and was divided into several images, which were displayed in front of everyone. Toshiro turned around and said to Noah and Rintaro, "You two are looking for President Takashi, right? I've already asked someone to search through the facial recognition program installed in the control room here. We'll get the results soon." As soon as Toshiro finished speaking, the corner of the huge monitor that was divided into several images was enlarged and filled up the entire monitor. The image that appeared on the monitor was the scene of Takashi sitting on the sofa in a hotel room, holding a mobile phone. It was unknown who he was talking to. President Takashi is now in the hotel. He hasn't left. Toshiro shrugged. Didn't you two go to the hotel to look for him earlier? What we want to see is not Takashi's current whereabouts, Noah said directly. Show us the surveillance footage after Takashi sneaked out of the hotel yesterday. Sneaked out of the hotel? Toshiro rolled his eyes slightly. Obviously, he had some doubts about the situation in his heart. However, Toshiro still asked the staff to show him the surveillance footage from yesterday. After a while, the image on the central monitor changed again. This time it showed the scene outside the hotel. Then Noah, Rentaro and Toshiro saw it at the same time. Takashi, who had changed out of his formal attire and was dressed as an ordinary staff member, did not bring any bodyguards with him. He went to the street alone, hailed a taxi and left the hotel. Seeing this, Noah immediately ordered, "Show me all the surveillance footage from behind." It had to be said that Noah, who had always dealt with all kinds of people, was like an extremely noble person when he gave an order. His voice and posture were full of majesty. Therefore, the group of staff followed Noah's orders almost instinctively. They didn't even ask for Toshiro's permission, which made Toshiro's expression a little resentful. Under the operation of the staff, the surveillance images of the car that Chiwu Zhongshuan was in were brought up one by one. Not long after, the car on the screen stopped at a place and opened the door for Chiwu Zhongshuan to get out. After getting out of the car, Zhong Xianhuan looked around and glanced at the watch on his wrist to confirm the time. Then he walked forward and arrived at a restaurant. He sat down and leisurely ate his lunch. Noah and Rentaro didn't say anything. They just stared at the monitor, watching Zhongshuan's actions. At a certain moment, Chiwu Zhongshuan confirmed the time again, paid the bill and walked out of the restaurant. He walked all the way to a deserted alley. Finally, Chiwu Zhongshuan came to a dark corner. There was already someone waiting for Chiwu Zhongshuan. Looking at the screen, Noya and Rentaro's eyes narrowed as they watched the person who was standing in a dark corner and talking to Takashi Zhongshuan, who had just arrived. The person who was talking to Chiwu Zhongshuan in the photo brought by Ziheng was completely hidden because of the angle of the photo. At this very moment, the image displayed on the monitor allowed Noah and Ryutaro to clearly see the full appearance of that person. "That is," Toshiro said in surprise. "Commander Soma Zhongshuan?" "Yes." The person who was talking to Chiwu Zhongshuan was the commander of the self-defense forces, Soma Zhongshuan. Before the international conference began, he treated Noah and the others as impolite brats in the lounge. He was the one who scolded Noah and the others, the commander of the self-defense forces. "So it's him?" Rentaro whispered. "Is he the spy that Chiwu Zhongshuan arranged in Tokyo?" "Not necessarily," Noah said indifferently. "It's also possible that after the conflict with us last time, he became resentful and reached an agreement with Chiwu Zhongshuan to cooperate." "It really does seem like something that arrogant commander would do," Rentaro said sarcastically. "Maybe he's just being used by Chiwu Zhongshuan. Regardless, our next target is finally out." Noah glanced at Soma Zhongshuan on the screen. "Let's go find this idiot." Chapter 2144. Tokyo District 40. This was the outermost district of the Tokyo area. It was also a district where no one lived. There were no skyscrapers or crowds of people here. There was only silence and desolation as far as the eye could see. Of course, as the outermost district of the Tokyo area, this was also known as the boundary between heaven and hell. Beyond this boundary was an endless forest. Inside there was a tall pitch-black wall that blocked the view. The towering pitch-black wall was the guardian of humanity's last paradise, the giant stone monument. It was so tall that it was almost impossible to see the top of it. Its color was darker than the darkness. It didn't make people think of hope but evil. Just its height alone was more than 1.6 kilometers. Even the width of the stone monument was 1 kilometer. There were actually many houses around it. These houses were the residences of the self-defense forces that guarded the border of the Tokyo area. Noah and Ryutaru arrived at this place in the evening. This was a place where not even a limousine was willing to drive in. Thus, Noah and Ryutaru took the limousine directly to District 39. After instructing the driver to wait there, they walked here on foot. "Although I've seen it many times." Ryutaru looked up at the giant, pitch-black stone monument and spoke with a complicated tone. "However, every time I see this pitch-black monument, I think that no matter how I look at it, it doesn't look like something that would protect humanity." "Is that so?" Noah asked in an indifferent tone. Then what kind of existence is more suitable to protect humanity? At least change the color. Ryutaru muttered. Something like white. That's why you can only think about it. Noah smiled slightly. Finding the white kuei is probably even more difficult than developing artificial artifacts. But this color really makes people feel uncomfortable. Ryutaru sighed. It's like telling humanity that even if we continue to live, the future will only be dark. No future is dark, Noah said without any hesitation. From the way I see it, as long as one is able to live on, there will be a future filled with hope. As for many people, as long as one is able to live on, not to mention the color of the huge stone tablet being black, even if one's entire body was dyed black, it wouldn't matter. Is that why so many humans are hopeless in this era? Rentaro's tone was downcast. Just thinking about it makes me feel like he's not human. I feel that compared to the previous you who didn't think about anything and only wanted to uphold justice, the sentimental you now is more unlike you. Noah could not help but laugh. When did you become so artistic? I also feel that I'm not like myself at all. Rentaro pursed his lips. It's just some nonsense, don't mind it. Hearing this, Noah shrugged and didn't say anything else. He raised his head and looked at the giant stone tablet in front of him. This is the first stone tablet, right? That's right. Rentaro collected his emotions and nodded. This is the first giant stone monument located right in front of the Tokyo area. The self-defense forces are stationed around the stone tablets all year round, and this first stone tablet is equivalent to the headquarters of the self-defense forces. Noah stroked his chin. Soma Munehiko is on duty here, right? At least, that's what the records say. Rentaro spread his hands. Since the commander of the self-defense forces went to the city to meet with Takashi Munehiko in private, it's hard to say if he's here or not. Whether he's here or not, we're going to make this trip anyway. Noah said helplessly. We've been running for a whole day. Let's hope that self-righteous bastard can give us something. If we knew this would happen, we should have brought more people with us. Rentaro said after the fact. In the end, the great president of Fairyland had to personally run around for a whole day, just to investigate a single matter. Just thinking about it makes me sigh. Compared to hiding in the office and going through documents, I'd rather do it myself. Noah narrowed his eyes. Moreover, this is no ordinary matter. It's worth it for me to do it. No ordinary matter. Rentaro was slightly taken aback before he reacted. Did you find anything? Sort of. Noah nodded. But it's just a guess. I wonder if Soma Munehiko can give me a clue that can confirm my guess. Then let's hurry over. Rentaro's face turned serious. It's already so late. If we continue to waste time, it'll be detrimental to our investigation. Noah nodded again. Then, Noah and Rentaro walked toward the stone tablet. Behind the first tablet, there was a house that wasn't exactly luxurious but was unusually spacious. Although it was called a house, at first glance it looked more like a military fortress. It was surrounded by walls, but there were many buildings inside. It looked like a military camp. Noah and Rentaro walked up to the gate and looked at the military camp. The military camp in the evening was eerily quiet. With the pitch-black stone tablet as the background, it made one's hair stand on end. Noah and Rentaro looked at each other. Then, at Noah's signal, Rentaro stepped forward and shouted at the top of his lungs. Is anyone here? Rentaro's voice turned into an echo that reverberated throughout the military camp. Under such circumstances, not a single person responded to Rentaro. Rentaro frowned and continued to speak. We're here on the orders of the Son of Heaven to patrol. If anyone is here, please open the door for us immediately. As Rentaro increased his volume, his voice became particularly loud and clear. It even caused an echo. However, Rentaro was still met with a deathly silence. Rentaro's frown deepened when he didn't get any response. His expression became somewhat unsightly. Are those guys doing this on purpose? After all, the self-defense forces and the Metropolitan Police Department were notorious for rejecting the police. They believed that the police were stealing their positions and jobs. They were generally hostile to the police. Perhaps it was because he knew that Noya and Rentaro were coming that he deliberately didn't respond, so that the two of them would be left in the cold. How could Rentaro's expression be any better when he thought of this? Just as Rentaro was about to continue shouting, Noah suddenly pressed on his shoulder. Rentaro. Noah stared in the direction of the military camp. Do you smell something? Smell? Rentaro was stunned. Then he twitched his nose. In the next second, Ryutaru's expression abruptly changed. This smell. Rentaro's expression became serious. Don't tell me. It should be. Noah's expression became emotionless as he said word by word. This is the smell of blood. That one sentence caused the temperature in the air to drop to freezing point. Bang! With a muffled explosion, Noah and Rentaro both broke through the ground and turned into afterimages. They leapt into the air and shot into the camp like two streaks of light. Noah and Rentaro had just stepped through the gate and leaped into the air. The scene of the entire military camp was imprinted into their eyes, and the scene that entered their field of vision caused their hearts to sink. In the vast military camp, soldiers wearing the uniform of the self-defense forces were lying all over the ground in disorder. There was a pool of blood under each of these soldiers. Their bodies were also covered in blood, and they were no longer breathing. Obviously, these soldiers of the self-defense forces were all dead. Rentaro was shocked. What the hell is going on? Noah ignored Rentaro. Instead, he stared at the bloody scene in front of him. After a while, he suddenly rushed forward in a direction. Noah! Rentaro was shocked and hurriedly followed him. Noah, on the other hand, stepped over one corpse after another and arrived in front of a building in the center of the military camp. Bang! The sturdy gate was kicked to pieces. Noah flashed into the building and then stopped. He looked in front of him and fell into silence. Rentaro, who followed closely behind Noah, also saw the scene in front of him. His expression changed a few times, and then he clenched his teeth. In front of them a corpse lay on the ground. His eyes were wide open, and his pupils were completely dilated. That person was Soma. Chapter 21:45. The thick smell of blood permeated the entire room. Noah looked at the lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. His eyes were wide open as if he had seen something unbelievable. Noah fell into silence, and Ryutaru's expression became more and more unsightly. Who is it? Ryutaru gritted his teeth. Who is it? Noah didn't answer. It wasn't that Noah was deliberately mystifying, but the situation happened so suddenly that even Noah couldn't determine who the murderer was. The only thing he was certain of was one thing. That is, the murderer was definitely not an ordinary person. In this military camp, which was equivalent to the headquarters of the self-defense forces, not only could he come and go as he pleased, but he could also easily kill all the soldiers of the self-defense forces without leaking any information. Such ability was not something that could be casually achieved by a person who came out of nowhere. Thinking of this, Noah stepped forward, squatted down, and gently pressed on the neck of Soma Zongxiong, who died with his eyes wide open. The body still has some body temperature. He should have been killed not long ago. Then the murderer is very likely to be nearby? Ryutaru quickly said. Should we go after him? The problem is, how do we go after him? Noah stood up and looked at Ryutaru. After entering the military camp, we didn't see any traces of guns or ammunition. We didn't even see any signs of fighting. This proves that the murderer was in the self-defense forces. The soldiers took their lives unknowingly, causing the entire military camp to be strangely quiet. Only Soma Zongxiong seemed to have seen something before he died. Such a person would definitely not leave behind any clues for others to follow and be found by others. You mean to say? Ryutaru said with a hint of bewilderment. There's only one murderer? Not necessarily. Noah gave his affirmation. Could also be a group of incredible assassins, that's hard to say. It's really hard to be happy about this, Ryutaru said with disdain. There must be a lot of people who died in this person's hands, right? Maybe. Noah closed his eyes. If it's really them, then their hands are really stained with blood. To be able to take the lives of all the soldiers of the self-defense forces, including the commander of the self-defense forces, Soma Zongxiong. This kind of ability, this kind of bloody method, Noah almost immediately thought of that person. The person who attempted to destroy the world, bringing strife and chaos to the world, and taking pleasure in doing so, leeching in. If it was that person together with Binay the Leech, It should be easy to take away the lives of an entire self-defense force soldier without anyone noticing, right? The question is, why did the father and daughter massacre here? While Noah was deep in thought, Ryutaru suddenly, "What is this?" Hearing Rentaro's voice, Noah opened his eyes. Then Noah saw it. Rentaro crouched down in front of Soma and took out something from under Soma. Key. Both Noah and Ryutaru were confused. The thing that Ryutaru took out from Soma Zongxiong's body was a key. Of course, if it was just an ordinary key, Noah and Ryutaru wouldn't be so confused. The reason why Noah and Ryutaru were confused was because this key was very special. Its entire body was pitch black, and there was a kind of darkness in its color that was even denser than the darkness. Pie. Noah was surprised. A key made of pie? Who would use pie to make a key? Ryutaru was confused. Is there a point? Yes. Is there a point? Pie was the most effective weapon against primitive animals, but it was widely used as a weapon. No one would want to use it in a way that had nothing to do with primitive animals. If we think about it the other way around, since this key is made of chi, it's most likely related to protozoa, right? Noah instantly switched his train of thought to reverse the situation. Ryutaru, let me see the key. Ryutaru immediately handed the key to Noah. Noah took the key, looked at it for a while and made a decision. Ryutaru. Noah looked at Ryutaru. Let's search this camp. Understood. Ryutaru nodded without any objection. The sky gradually darkened. In the Self-Defense Forces camp, the bodies of the soldiers lying in pools of blood were covered with blankets. Noah and Rentaro searched the entire camp while covering the corpses with blankets, so that their corpses wouldn't be exposed in the wilderness. By the time Noah and Ryutaru finished searching the entire camp, all the bodies were covered with blankets. Noah and Ryutaru also found something. In front of the wall in the deepest part of the camp, Ryutaru shouted and pushed open a metal box that was much bigger than him. It was as big as a truck's cargo box. Phew! Ryutaru wiped the sweat from his forehead, looked at the ground and then at Noah. Is there anything strange here? Noah nodded. Undoubtedly, there's no pie here, but I can sense a weak magnetic field unique to pie metals. There's something wrong here. Pie's weak magnetic field? You can sense that? Ryutaru looked as if he had seen a ghost. Are you even human? You don't have the right to criticize me, Mr. Robot Soldier, Noah replied indifferently, then looked at the ground. Also, the weak magnetic field of pie is coming from below. I'm afraid there's a hidden space here. A hidden space? Ryutaru stepped forward suspiciously, raised his foot and stomped on the ground. Clang! An incomparably clear sound rang out. There really is a hidden space? Ryutaru was shocked. As for Noah, he looked around the ground, then squatted down and dug up some of the soil on the ground. Immediately, a pitch-black metallic luster appeared in the air. Ryutaru finally reacted. He squatted down and dug up the soil on the ground. Not long after, a pitch-black door appeared on the ground. First it's a pie key and now it's a pie door? Ryutaru tapped his palm. Since we have the key and the door, we don't have to think about what to do next. Hearing this, Noah smiled and took out the key. He inserted it into the keyhole of the door and turned it. Gotcha! The moment the door was turned on, Noah and Ryutaru both perked up. The two of them held the doorknob and pulled open the door on the ground. A pitch-black space suddenly appeared before the two of them. Noah and Ryutaru looked at each other, then jumped into the dark space. What? In the dark basement, Ryutaru's expression changed drastically. With a swoosh, his face turned pale. Next to him, Noah quietly looked at the scene in front of him. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. What is this? Ryutaru's voice was filled with disbelief and trembling as he shouted. What is this? In the dark basement, there was nothing but neatly arranged cages. The cages were also made of pie metal. In each of the cages there were monsters lying in them. They were motionless as if they were in a deep sleep. Some of these monsters looked like tigers, some like leopards, some like bears, and some like dragons. There were almost all kinds of shapes and sizes. There were even some that had the characteristics of several or even dozens of animals. Their bodies were huge. There was no need to say what the monster's true form was to be guessed. What else could they be other than gastronomic animals? Why? Ryutaru's voice was dry. Why would there be gastronomic animals hidden in the Self-Defense Forces barracks? Who knows? Noah smirked. Maybe it's because everyone who came here had the same question as you. That's why the Self-Defense Forces were massacred. In other words, the Self-Defense Forces' cause of death was none other than silencing them. Now Noah was completely sure. Li Ching-yin, Noah said indifferently. The murderer must be that guy. Chapter 2146. Where is this place? This is the Self-Defense Forces military camp, which is next to the giant stone monument. The giant stone monument was so close to this place. What kind of protozoan would appear here? It was obvious that if they weren't forced, and under the circumstances where the Ho was their natural enemy, protogut animals would never appear in such a place. However, in this basement there were hundreds and thousands of protozoa. This kind of unreasonable phenomenon is undoubtedly telling others. These protogut animals were all secretly transported in by someone. And who would transport protozoa to the Tokyo area? A while ago Noah saw one. Wuxia Association. The mysterious organization that can control primitive animals. Last time, they used a stage for primitive animal to attack. I'm afraid these primitive animals were also cultivated by Wuxia Association, right? Noah calmly analyzed. And since these primitive animals were secretly hidden here, it's obviously Soma Munio's doing. The key to open this basement is on Soma Munio's body. In addition, these primitive animals all appeared in the basement of the Self-Defense Forces military camp. Who would believe that the commander of the Self-Defense Forces didn't participate? So, Soma Munio is a cadre of Wuxiang Association? Ryutaro said, then immediately denied his own statement. No, if Soma Munio was a cadre of Wuxiang Association, then how could he be killed by Li Ching-yin? Moreover, on Soma Munio's body, I didn't see the tattoo of Wuxiang Association, Noah said thoughtfully. From what I see, Soma Zongxiong was just being used. Used? That's right. Noah looked around at the cages where the primitive gut animals were kept. It's very likely that Soma Mengxing didn't know that these cages contained primitive intestine animals, but he was deceived by the people of the Five Xiang Association. He secretly moved these primitive intestine animals here, and hid them for the people of the Five Xiang Association. The other party was a mysterious organization that could even recruit Grunewald, one of the most powerful minds in the world. They also had enough power in the Tokyo area to secretly produce a batch of firearms, and even military helicopters. Presumably, the cadre of this mysterious organization, in Tokyo, either has a very high status or a huge network. Under such circumstances, the other party is very likely to be familiar with Soma Munsong, the commander of the Self-Defense Forces. Before this international conference, they used Soma Munsong to transport the primitive intestines belonging to the Five Xiang Association into the conference. Needless to say, those guys moved these primitive animals to Tokyo. They must want to use them to deal with me, right? Noah's eyes showed a bit of wisdom. It's just that I released the artificial artifact at the international conference, which made the Wuxiang Association realize the fact that these primitive animals couldn't deal with me, so they killed the useless Soma Munsong and even the entire self-defense forces, leaving these primitive animals behind. If that's the case, who is the person who used Soma Association? Ryutaro's heart. Is it Kiwu Munio? Is Kiwu Munio the top cadre of Wuxiang Association? The ruler of Osaka has more than once expressed his desire for world hegemony. And the ultimate goal of Wuxiang Association is also the world. In that case, doesn't Kiwu Munio have enough reasons to become the top cadre of Wuxiang Association? You asked Mugen-san to keep an eye on Kiwu Munio because you suspect that he is the top cadre of Wuxiang Association, right? Ryutaro said with some annoyance. Damn it, if we knew his plan, then we might have been able to stop all of this. Hearing this, Noah just wanted to say something, but his eyes suddenly narrowed. He looked up and looked around. What's wrong? Ryutaro noticed Noah's strangeness, and as soon as he asked this question, he also noticed that something was wrong. Unknowingly, the atmosphere in the air had become somewhat sinister. Hew. The sound of breathing gradually became rapid and rough. Noah and Ryutaro looked around back to back, but their faces showed a thought-provoking expression, and the other showed an extremely bitter expression. Although their expressions were completely different, their words overlapped with each other. It seems that some troublesome things are about to happen. Along with this sentence, in the surrounding cages, pairs of scarlet eyes opened one after another. The protogut animals that were still sleeping a second ago suddenly woke up without anyone noticing. Kacha. In the next moment, a crisp sound came from the door of one of the cages. Kacha kacha kacha. As if causing a chain reaction, the crisp sound of opening and closing echoed one after another, causing the doors of the cages to slowly open. Hew, hew, hew. In each of the cages, the primitive animals' breathing became louder and louder as the doors opened. All of the primitive animals opened their eyes and stared at Noah and Ryutaro with a murderous glint in their eyes. The surrounding air instantly froze. Ryutaro looked at this scene with his own eyes, slowly clenched his fist, and spoke in a deep voice as if his mouth was dry. How many can you deal with? What about you? Noah did not answer, but instead asked a question of his own. How many do you think you can deal with? If it's stage 4, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 10 of them at once. Ryutaro's forehead was dripping with sweat. But among the primitive animals here, there are more than 10 stage 4 creatures, right? There are 33 stage 4 creatures, 75 stage 3 creatures, 180 stage 2 creatures, and 324 stage I creatures. These are the numbers that I roughly calculated. Noah slowly raised the corner of his mouth. Then our friend of justice Ryutaro-san, how long do you think you can last under the siege of this army of monsters? 3 minutes, I think. Ryutaro laughed in a self-torturous manner. If you don't come to save me in 3 minutes, then prepare to make a grave for me. You really don't have confidence in yourself. If it were Yenju, even if you were surrounded by this army of primitive animals, you would still have a chance of breaking through, Noah said calmly. Although that's because Yenju has achieved domain, and is no longer the same as before, Ryutaro-san, in my opinion, you are an existence that explodes with greater strength the closer you are in a life or death situation. You should be able to last for 10 minutes, and you should be able to drag most of the primitive animals down to hell with you. Thank you for thinking so highly of me, President. Ryutaro could not help but click his tongue. If that's the case, remember to save me in 10 minutes. I'll try my best. When this seemingly relaxed conversation finally came to an end, the sinister atmosphere in the basement finally exploded. Roar, 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 roar. In the cages around them, the protozoa all let out terrifying roars and started running wildly. All of a sudden, the wooden cages were smashed into pieces by the primitive gut animals. The protozoa roared at the sky, shaking the ground as they charged toward Noya and Rintaro like a flood of ferocious beasts. Ryutaru's right hand and right leg suddenly burst into flames. It was as if a blue flame had been ignited, burning his skin to nothing. Under the gradually burning skin, a pure black metal prosthetic arm flickered with a dark light. Like muscles, it suddenly swelled up. In contrast, Noah merely stared at the primitive gut animal that was roaring and charging at him, his gaze gradually turning cold. In the next second, the army of protozoa swallowed Noah and Ryutaru whole. Hiya! At the center of the primitive intestine animal army, a thunderous roar resounded. Bang! A violent gust of wind swept out like a raging wave, blowing away all the protozoa in the surroundings. Noah and Ryutaro still had their backs to each other. They clenched their fists and looked forward. Remember! Ryutaro yelled. You have to save me in 10 minutes. Didn't I tell you? Noah laughed. I'll try my best. After saying that, Noah and Ryutaro simultaneously stomped on the ground and shot forward. Chapter 2147. Crack! When Ryutaru transformed himself into a cannonball and shot out like a bullet, one of his left eyes suddenly rotated. Like a small, intricate instrument, it flashed with a pitch-black light. It was the 21st style obsidian prosthetic eye. It was a calculation device installed on Ryutaru's left eye that could accelerate his thinking. In this prosthetic eye, Ryutaru saw a world that was slowed down by hundreds or even thousands of times. Therefore, in Ryutaru's eyes, the group of protozoa that were charging at him like ferocious beasts seemed to be moving in slow motion. They stomped on the ground while roaring and charging at him. Seeing this, Ryutaru exerted force in his prosthetic limbs. Ryutaru's prosthetic limbs weren't just made of ultra alloy. They were metallic prosthetic limbs with powerful attack power. Inside the prosthetic limbs there were cartridges. There were 10 cartridges in his arms. There were 15 in his thighs. These cartridges were all special items. When fired, they would produce a tremendous driving force, which would increase Ryudaru's attack power and speed supernaturally. Facing the large group of protozoa that were charging at him, Ryudaru fired the cartridges on his legs without hesitation. Bam! Accompanied by a loud gunshot sound, an empty cartridge was ejected from Ryudaru's right prosthetic limb and thrown into the air. Dong! Ryudaru's speed instantly soared. The propulsion device on his legs immediately activated, turning the driving force of the cartridges into a jet of light that shot Ryudaru out like a meteor. Then Ryudaru fired the cartridges on his right arm. Tendo-style combat technique, Form 1 3rd level. Ryudaru, who was shooting out like a meteor, suddenly turned around and clenched his fist. Dear ambush demon! His right fist, which had been enhanced by the driving force, carried a terrifying force and stirred up a strong wind. Like a meteor, it landed heavily on one of the protozoa that was charging at him. Bam! The stage 4 protozoa completely withstood Ryudaru's attack. Under the direct attack of Ryudaru's metal right fist, the protozoa's body suddenly exploded with a terrifying explosive force. Large amounts of blood and flesh flew everywhere. Roar, roar, roar! Several protozoa immediately stepped over the corpses of their own kind, and with intimidating roars, they pounced toward Rintaro with even more ferocity. Without any hesitation, Ryudaru fired the ammo cartridge on his leg again. His figure turned into a laser beam and instantly disappeared from the spot. Boom! The ferocious protozoa immediately slammed into Rintaro's original position one after another. With a loud bang, the ground shook abruptly, stirring up a large amount of strong winds and dense dust. Roar, roar, roar! The other protogut animals, on the other hand, ignored him completely and continued to charge toward Rintaro. Their ferocious mouths were wide open, and as they roared, sticky saliva dripped from them. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Unfortunately, I'm not a qualified piece of food. Ryudaru assumed a fighting stance. The artificial eye in his left eye was frantically calculating, accelerating his thinking by 1,000 times, allowing him to completely grasp the movements of the charging protozoa army. After all, the ammo cartridge in the artificial arm was limited. If he used it all up, Rintaro would completely lose his superhuman attack power and explosive force, and could only rely on the hardness of the artificial arm to fight. If that was the case, Rintaro's strength would undoubtedly drop greatly. If he were to use the IP ranking to evaluate, it would be much clearer. Under normal circumstances with Rintaro's strength, he would at most be in the top 300 of the IP ranking. With the artificial eye activated, Rintaro would be able to rank in the top 100 of the IP ranking. If he used both the artificial eye and the artificial arm at the same time, the mechanical soldier's abilities would be fully activated, and with Rintaro's Heavenly Child combat technique, Rintaro's strength would be a powerful booster in the top 10 of the IP ranking. That was why Rintaro claimed that he could only last 3 minutes because of the ammo cartridge in his artificial arm. Once he used it all up, his strength would instantly drop from the top 10 of the IP ranking, and he would only be in the top 100 of the IP ranking. Under the siege of so many protozoa, that level of strength would not be able to last even a minute. Therefore, the only thing Rintaro could do was to stall for time as much as possible. Unless he had no other choice, he would definitely not use the limited ammo cartridge. Even if he used it, he would not use it on some small fry. Because of this, Rintaro immediately fired the ammo cartridges in his right arm and right leg, instantly eliminating the most threatening stage for protozoa. Roar, 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 roar. The protozoa did not know Rintaro's weakness at all. They just roared without reason and charged toward Rintaro like wild beasts. The next moment, Rintaro immediately fell into a passive state. In a situation where he tried his best not to use his ammunition, Rintaro could only dodge the frenzied pouncing of the protogut beasts. He either rolled on the ground or dodged to the side, barely avoiding the predations of the protogut beasts. Unfortunately, there were too many protozoa. Once they surrounded him, Rintaro could not dodge at all. He could only shoot the ammo cartridge in his leg. With the help of the propulsion device, he leaped up like a flash of light and dodged the protozoa's pouncing attacks at an astonishing speed. At that moment, Rintaro showed his amazing strength as a booster in the 7th place of the IP ranking. While dodging with the help of the propulsion device, Rintaro did not waste the opportunity. The moment he moved among the protozoa army, his artificial eye keenly located the most threatening stage for protozoa. Heavenly Child Combat Technique Form 3, Level 15 Yunling Lakeside Carp. The powerful uppercut was like a rocket that shot straight into the sky. It carried an astonishing impact and heavily hit the exposed abdomen of the stage for protozoa. Bang! Another muffled explosion rang out. A stage for protozoan was once again blasted apart by Rintaro's terrifying punch. Blood and flesh splattered all over the ground. Rintaro kept moving among the protozoa's encirclement just like that. Sometimes, he relied only on his physical ability to dodge in a somewhat embarrassing manner. Sometimes he used the ammo cartridge in his leg to flash back and forth like a thunderbolt with the help of the propulsion device. Sometimes he targeted the stage for protozoa and used the explosive force from the ammo cartridge as a weapon to deliver a powerful punch and blow the stage for protozoa to pieces. Sometimes, he would take advantage of the fact that the thrusters in his legs had yet to disappear. While he was dodging, he would use the Heavenchild-style combat techniques kicks. With 1 or 2 flying kicks, he would destroy the protozoa that he passed by. In the blink of an eye, Rintaro had ferociously taken care of several stage 4 protozoa. He had also casually taken care of dozens of stage 1 and 2 protozoa. However, under such circumstances, the protozoa were still fearless of death. They stepped on the blood and flesh of their companions and charged toward Rintaro with frenzied roars. Tisk! Rintaro could not help but click his tongue. 5 minutes had passed. Just as Noah had said, Rintaro's performance was far better than he had expected when he entered combat mode. However, Rintaro had exchanged a lot of ammo cartridges for that. 3 rounds left in my right arm. 2 rounds left in my right leg. Rintaro calculated the remaining ammo cartridges in his prosthetic arm. While retreating, he pulled out an automatic pistol from his waist and pointed it forward. Bang! 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 However, the stage I protozoa that were hit in the head by the pie metal bullets only paused for a moment. Then their eyes flashed with even more ferocious light, and they charged towards Rintaro without slowing down at all. What? Rintaro was shocked. The bang! It's useless. Due to his shock, Rintaro missed the opportunity to use the ammo cartridge in his prosthetic arm. Roar! 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 One of the protozoa charged toward Rintaro and slammed into him. Bang! A violent impact exploded on Rintaro's body. Chapter 2148. Goo! When the protogut animal crashed into Rintaro's body, the impact was so strong that Rintaro felt as if his internal organs had been disrupted, and he spat out the air in his lungs. Roar! The protogut animal did not hesitate at all. It raised its sharp front claws and slashed at Ryutaru with a cold wind. It was like a shining blade. Clang! In the nick of time, Rintaro raised his right arm in time and blocked the sharp claws with his super-strong metal prosthetic arm. However, the protogut animal had not only sharp claws but also a thick tail. Moreover, it was a stage 3 protogut animal. Whoosh! In the next instant, the thick tail turned into a blurry whip shadow and lashed at Rintaro's abdomen. Bam! With a muffled thud, Rintaro was sent flying and tumbled to the ground. He rolled dozens of times on the ground before finally coming to a stop. Ugh! Ryutaru clutched his abdomen and let out a bitter groan. Damn it! I was careless. Unfortunately, there was no time for Rintaro to regret. Roar! 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 With an intimidating roar, the protogut beast that sent Ryutaru flying acted like a commander. Together with the army of protogut beasts behind it, they charged toward Ryutaru, who was rolling on the ground. They were like a pack of frenzied beasts. Rintaro gritted his teeth and endured the excruciating pain in his body as he struggled to get up. Chi! Just as Rintaro was about to fight for his life, a phantom swept past him like a stream of light. Then it punched out. Bam! The stage 3 protozoa that had just beaten the careless Ryutaru into a pulp exploded under Seiji's fist. The protogut animal army's roar came to an abrupt stop. Moreover, their charging momentum came to a stop as well. All the protogut animals, regardless of whether they were stage I or stage 4, seemed to be rooted to the spot. They couldn't move, and the murderous look in their eyes turned into fear. This was because a terrifying aura was spreading in front of the protogut animals. The pressure came from a single person. Noah gazed at the protozoa in front of him with his deep dark eyes. He spoke to Ryutaru without turning his head. "Isn't it 10 minutes?" Hearing this, Ryutaru finally reacted. However, he did not look at Noah immediately. Instead, he subconsciously looked behind him. In the next moment, Ryutaru's pupils shrank. On the ground behind Rintaro, countless blood and minced meat were splattered all over the ground. The heads of the primitive animals almost filled the entire ground as they lost all signs of life. Seeing this, Ryutaru instantly understood. While he was being forced into such a miserable state by a group of primitive animals, Noah had already slaughtered all of them. Understanding this, Ryutaru smiled bitterly. "In the beginning, I only spoke for 3 minutes. So?" Noah bent down and picked up the automatic pistol that Ryutaru dropped on the ground. His gaze remained fixed in front of him as he spoke in a seemingly casual manner. "Did I underestimate you? Or did I overestimate you?" "It doesn't matter if you underestimate me or overestimate me," Ryutaru said as he looked at Noah's back that was abnormally tall and straight. "All I know is that you're still the same as before. You're as strong as a monster." Hearing this, the corner of Noah's lips curled up. However, his eyes turned cold. The terrifying pressure that permeated the air was instantly ignited. Roar, the fear in the hearts of those primitive animals was ignited at the same time. At the same time, the madness in the hearts of the primitive animals also exploded. As if they had gone mad, the protogut animals once again charged forward, causing the ground to tremble and the ferocious beasts' roars to resound throughout the entire space. In response, Noah looked at the primitive animals that were charging at him in a frenzy and raised the automatic pistol in his hand. "No," Ryutaru quickly said. "It doesn't work on them." "I know," Noah simply replied. "When these monsters woke up and smashed the cage without any fear, I already knew about it." As he said that, Noah did not lower the automatic pistol in his hand. However, in Noah's body, the vast and boundless energy turned into magic power and circulated wildly. Naturally, this magic power had the characteristic of infusing imagination and materializing. The imagination that Noah infused into the magic power was his specialty: crushing. The massive crushing magic power flowed like a torrent under Noah's control and infused into the small automatic pistol. In the next moment, Noah aimed at the primitive animals that were charging at him and pulled the trigger of the automatic pistol in his hand. Bang! 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 The sound of gunshots was accompanied by muzzle flashes. Once again, the refined bullets pierced through the air at a speed that could not be captured by the naked eye, madly shooting at the primitive animals. Ryutaru, who was activating his artificial eye, saw it clearly. A layer of gorgeous white light shrouded each and every one of the pellet bullets. The refined bullets were unleashed forward and rained down on the primitive animals that were charging at him. Bang! When the first bullet penetrated the forehead of a protozoan, the protozoan was shrouded in a dazzling white light. Then it was cut into cubes by white lines and turned into chunks of meat under the sound of an explosion. Bang! 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 The bullets fired forward hit the protozoa one after another, shrouding them in a dazzling white light. The protozoa were sliced apart evenly, and following a series of explosions, they turned into chunks of meat that scattered in the surroundings. Under such circumstances, Noah just kept pulling the trigger of the automatic pistol in his hand, shooting the primitive animals one after another and creating a splatter of blood. Regardless of what stage the protozoa was at, under the shooting of Noah's extremely ordinary pellet bullets, it was as if they were buried with bombs. They exploded one after another, dying without a complete corpse. That's, Ryutaru instantly recalled. It was a bullet that could cut the opponent into pieces and then completely explode like a pulverized bullet. Wasn't that the bullet that Noah used to kill Scorpio 3 years ago? Ryutaru was more familiar with this bullet than anyone else. After all, 3 years ago, before Noah left, he gave Ryutaru a magazine full of this bullet as his trump card. Over the past 3 years, Ryutaru had traveled around the world and clashed head-on with all kinds of powerhouses. The reason he could survive unscathed was because of his rapid improvement in strength and also because of the pulverized bullet that Noah gave him. Using it, Ryutaru even killed a Stage V Zodiac. and defeated a mechanical soldier that was ranked in the top 10 of the IP ranking. In the end, he finally made it to the top 10 of the IP ranking, and successfully transferred a large number of cursed children from all over the world to Fairyland, making an indelible contribution to the development of Fairyland. With that, how could Ryutaru not be familiar with this bullet? But the bullet I loaded in the pistol isn't the pulverized bullet. Moreover, I've used up all of those bullets, so I can't reload it even if I want to. Ryutaru stared ahead. So, Noah still has this kind of bullet in his hand? Unknowingly, the gunshots and explosions stopped. Noah finally lowered the automatic pistol in his hand and stopped firing. However, Ryutaru held his breath. That was because there was no longer any protozoa left in front of Noah, only minced meat and blood on the ground. This guy. Ryutaru sighed from the bottom of his heart. He really is a monster. However, the monster that Rentaro spoke of suddenly narrowed its eyes and turned around. While Rentaro was stunned, the monster grabbed him by the collar. Under the pitch-black monument, the Self-Defense Forces military camp was still eerily silent. However, in the next moment the silence was completely shattered. Boom! The vast military camp exploded without any warning. The explosion resounded through the sky. Chapter 2149. Under the earth-shattering noise, the entire Self-Defense Force military camp, which occupied a vast area behind the black mountain-like stone tablet, exploded and turned into ruins, completely disappearing in the long river of history. The flames rolled up like raging waves. The impact shook out like a star exploding. Just like that, a shocking explosion occurred in the Self-Defense Forces barracks, causing the entire barracks to be engulfed in flames and slowly burn. Boom, boom, boom. After the big explosion, continuous small explosions occurred in the military camp one after another. Pa pa pa. The high walls surrounding the entire Self-Defense Forces military camp were blown away, causing rubble and debris to scatter in all directions, stirring up crisp sounds. Billowing black smoke rose from the Self-Defense Forces military camp covered in flames, with the giant black monolith as the background, rising in the direction of the sky, looking extremely ominous. The Self-Defense Forces military camp, which had been located under the number 1 monolith since the establishment of the Tokyo area, finally completely turned into burning ruins today, gradually coming to an end. And there was only one person who witnessed all of this with his own eyes. Not far from the Self-Defense Forces military camp, a young man in a suit looked at the Self-Defense Forces military camp shrouded in flames and gradually coming to an end. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up. The young man's appearance gave people a sense of righteousness. In front of him an identity card was worn. On the identity card there was a name, Toshiro Cabinets. It was Toshiro Cabinets, a police officer of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, who was once engaged to Mugung, and was ordered by the emperor to help Noah check the Tokyo area's surveillance footage. However, this young man, who had been acting like a rising star in the limelight and made people have a good impression of him at this time, had a look of satisfaction on his face. What master of Fairyland? Toshiro Cabinet sneered. In the end, didn't you still die in my hands? As he said this, Toshiro Cabinet's expression became more and more satisfied, as if his thoughts were clear, and he felt extremely refreshed. Under such circumstances, Toshiro Cabinets took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. The phone was immediately picked up. A voice came from Toshiro Cabinet's mobile phone. A closet. It's me, Your Excellency, Toshiro said. The mission has been completed. Noah Doria and Riken Rentaro, the two of them, have both died in the Sea of Fire. Is that so? His Excellency did not show much joy. Instead he asked cautiously, Are you sure he's dead? According to your plan, Noah Doria and Rinken Rentaro should be in the basement of the Self-Defense Forces right now. They should be able to see the protogut animals there, Toshiro said with certainty. And just now I've already opened all the cages through remote control. After that, I immediately started the countdown for the explosion. The explosion will happen in 10 minutes. In just 10 minutes, it's impossible for those two to deal with all the protozoa in the basement and escape from the military camp. I hope so too. His Excellency's tone softened, but his words were still solemn. In order to kill that Noah Doria, I've even put all the protozoa that I've painstakingly cultivated into the plan. If we can kill him, that would be the best. Don't worry, I've been watching from here. Until the explosion, I didn't see Noah Doria come out of the military camp. Toshiro Cabinets looked at the military camp that was engulfed by the sea of fire and smiled. Even the entire military camp was engulfed in the explosion. Noah Doria is definitely not dead, Your Excellency. This is the price of going against the Wuxia Association. His Excellency's voice became extremely cold. The world hegemony will only belong to us, the Wuxia Association. No one else can take it away from us. You're right, Toshiro Cabinets agreed. Then, Your Excellency, what should I do next? Although Noah Doria is dead, there's still another leader in Fairyland, His Excellency said without any hesitation. Tenzin Mugen, the blade demon left behind by the Tenzin family, is still alive. She was the one who brought Fairyland up. If we want Fairyland to collapse, we'll have to get rid of Tenzin Mugen. Get rid of Tenzin Mugen? Toshiro Cabinets' eyes turned slightly, and the topic of conversation abruptly changed. Your Excellency, in fact, I don't think we need to get rid of Tenzin Mugen. Oh. His Excellency did not expect Toshiro Cabinets to suddenly say that, and asked with interest. Why? Although Tenzin Mugen is the acting president of Fairyland, this matter is not necessarily a bad thing for us, Toshiro Cabinets said with a deeper meaning. She's a woman after all. No matter how capable she is, once she's conquered by a man, not only would she not be an obstacle, but she could also become a help, right? Conquered by a man. His Excellency seemed to understand what Toshiro Cabinets meant. In other words, you want to make a move on Tenzin Mugen? Your humble servant was once betrothed to Tenzin Mugen when we were young, but Tenzin Mugen left the Tenzin family later on, and that was why the betrothal was annulled, Toshiro Cabinets said with great confidence. Since there's this layer of relationship, then I can easily get in touch with this acting president of Fairyland. I'm sure it won't be difficult to take down this blade demon of the Tenzin family. As he said that, Toshiro Cabinets could not help but recall the situation when he met Mugen at the embassy during the international conference. Toshiro Cabinets had long had ideas about Mugen. Toshiro Cabinets was born in a family of police officers, and had a lot to do with the Tenzin family that controlled the entire Tokyo region. That was why the Tenzin family and the Cabinets had a marriage alliance, and had Mugen and Toshiro Cabinets sign a marriage agreement to deepen the relationship between the two families. When he first went to the Tenzin family and saw Mugen, Toshiro Cabinets was already mesmerized by her. Although she was still young at that time, Mugen was indeed the daughter of the Tenzin family that controlled the entire Tokyo region. Although she was still young, her beauty had already been revealed since then. Since then, Toshiro Cabinets had been coveting Mugen. As Mugen grew up, her beauty gradually matured, and her figure became more and more perfect, and his covetousness grew stronger and stronger. To put it bluntly, Mugen was a stunner. Although she did not have the holiness that came from the bones like Sei Tianzi, in terms of beauty, Mugen was definitely not inferior to Sei Tianzi, and in terms of figure she would definitely crush him. Which man would not be moved by such a woman? Toshiro Cabinets had always coveted Mugen, and it was not without reason. When Mugen became the acting president of Fairyland, and became a behemoth that could obtain world hegemony, Toshiro Cabinets coveted Mugen almost to the point of madness. If I can get this woman, then wouldn't Fairyland become mine? With such a wishful thinking, every time Toshiro Cabinets saw Mugen's mature beauty on TV, the flame in his heart would burn even brighter. Unfortunately, Mugen was already the acting president of the high and mighty Fairyland, and Toshiro Cabinets could not even see her face. Until the appearance of the international conference, Toshiro Cabinets realized that the opportunity had come. Originally, in Toshiro Cabinets' plan, the meeting at the embassy, he could use their childhood relationship to leave an impression in Mugen's heart, and then slowly develop. However, when they met in the embassy's lounge, Mugen did not even look at Toshiro Cabinets, and only cared about tangling with Sima Weiji. That was fine. After that, Mugen actually hugged Noah's arm out of jealousy, and at that time Toshiro Cabinets' heart was burning with rage, and finally hostility and malice toward Noah was ignited. At that time, Noah felt a sharp gaze that carried negative emotions, which was the gaze of Toshiro Cupboard. Since then, Toshiro Cabinets had been thinking about killing Noah all the time. When Toshiro Cabinets was given the mission to participate in the plan to kill Noah, Toshiro Cabinets agreed without a second thought. Now that Noah Doria is dead, Fairyland will completely belong to Tenzin Mugging, and as long as I take Tenzin Mugging, then this huge force of Fairyland will no longer be a hindrance to us, but a help to us. Toshiro Cabinet said proudly, "Please give Tenzin Mugging to me, sir." As soon as his voice fell, "Unfortunately, you won't have the chance." Chapter 2150. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance. When this voice came from behind Toshiro, Toshiro's eyes widened to their maximum. By the time Toshiro snapped out of his daze and turned around, a black shadow had already appeared in front of him. Heavenly Child Battle Technique, Form 1, 8th level. Ryutaru stared at Toshiro with an expression of unprecedented anger. He took up his stance and clenched his left hand into a fist. Flame Fan. A straight punch was unleashed from Rintaro's hand. Bang! With a muffled thud, Rintaro's fist landed heavily on Toshiro's stomach. His fist even dug deep into Toshiro's flesh. Goo! Toshiro immediately issued a painful muffled cry, his whole body paralyzed, clutching his abdomen, his face twisted. "You should be glad that I didn't use prosthetics." Rintaro looked down at Toshiro with cold eyes. "Otherwise it won't be as simple as just a little pain." "You?" Toshiro clenched his teeth and looked at Ryutaru with eyes full of shock and disbelief. However, Toshiro didn't have much time to be shocked. Beside him, the phone that had fallen to the ground made a sound. "What's wrong? What happened?" Hearing this voice, Toshiro's expression stiffened. However, this time, before Toshiro could react, a hand reached out and picked up the phone on the ground. "Hello," Noah said faintly. "How should I address you?" All the sounds on the phone disappeared in an instant. After a while, an extremely low and deep voice came out from inside. "You're not dead. There are many people who want me dead, but unfortunately, I am still alive and well." Noah's tone did not change in the slightest. He was still as calm as ever. "Then, this mysterious person who wishes for my death, I will call you the top cadre of the Wuxiang Association. There shouldn't be a problem, right? So that's how it is." His Excellency sneered. "You already knew that the barracks was a trap?" "Not really," Noah answered honestly. "When I saw the meeting between Chiwu Zhongshuan and Xiangma Zhongxiong on the monitor, I knew that something would happen here." "This is true." "Is that so?" His Excellency's voice became colder and colder. "Then may I ask, how did you see through it?" "It's very simple. I just think that if Chiwu Zhongshuan, an ambitious guy, really wanted to do something to me in secret, he would definitely not be easily photographed and exposed to the surveillance cameras." Noah shrugged. "No matter what, he is a dictator. When he was in the Osaka area, many people wanted to take his life. I also wanted to take his life before. Although I let him go in the end, that guy should be very afraid of me. Under such circumstances, it's normal for Chiwu Zhongshuan not to show any flaws in front of me. As a result, he was easily photographed secretly, and it was even captured by the monitor. What's the point of this?" Noah curled his lips and smiled. "So, from the beginning, I didn't put any hope on the pictures taken by the surveillance cameras. The reason why I looked at it was just to find some clues. Who would have thought that I would see Chiwu Zhongshuan being photographed directly? In this way I have to think about it. Think about whether Chiwu Zhongshuan did it on purpose. Soma Zhongxiong was just used by you, right?" Noah said calmly. "First, he was used to transport the cages containing the primitive animals, then he was used to bait me. When he was no longer useful, he was killed by the leech father and daughter you sent along with the entire self-defense forces. First, it was to silence them, and second, it was to lead me to the basement. Otherwise, you wouldn't have put the key on Soma Zhongxiong. I'm afraid that you know that the primitive animals you cultivated are useless in front of the artificial artifacts of Fairyland, so you simply used them to set up a trap and lead me in," Noah said with a faint smile. "Moreover, since Chiwu Zhongshuan is involved, it proves that he is either cooperating with you, or he is also a member of the Wuxiang Association. Considering his ambition and vigilance, he should not cooperate with a mysterious organization that also has the goal of world hegemony. Can only be the latter. As for you, after I confirmed that this is a trap, I roughly know who you are." Noah's tone became cold. "After all, there is only one reason why I came out of the holy residence." The atmosphere in the air immediately became oppressive. At this moment, Noah could clearly hear 3 breathing sounds gradually becoming more rapid. One was Ryutaru's breathing. He saw that Ryutaru was clenching his teeth tightly. His expression was extremely ugly, and there was a strong sense of sorrow in his eyes. The other was Toshiro's breathing. When this sanctimonious police officer heard that Noah had long known that the Self-Defense Forces barracks was a trap, his face became extremely pale. The other was from the mobile phone that was pressed against Noah's ear. It was the sound of His Excellency's breathing. Noah did not know what His Excellency's expression was like. However, Noah could roughly imagine what it would be like. The top operatives of a mysterious organization that has the ultimate goal of world hegemony. That police officer on the ground over there seems to have called you His Excellency, right? Noah sighed regretfully. To be able to cultivate a controllable protozoan, and to be able to rope in one of the 4 wise men into your organization, you are indeed quite capable. I guess the most you usually do is to eliminate all the people who oppose you, right? However, this time, you are a little too hasty. Noah laughed at the phone. Even if you want to set me up, you should at least be a little more precise. How can you expose yourself so easily? Or is it to say that this is all you can do? Is this your limit? Noah's smile disappeared as he spoke indifferently. If that is the case, I advise you to obediently continue to lie low. There is no place for you in this world. After saying that, Noah ignored the increasingly rapid breathing sound from the phone and threw out this sentence. Since I have already caught your tail, don't even think about escaping. Be mentally prepared. After leaving this sentence, Noah hung up the phone. When you get back, track the signal just now. Noah tossed the phone to Ryutaru. Although the other party will definitely destroy the phone immediately, this should be able to find out where they are hiding. Maybe we can find something. Ryutaru took the phone and nodded without saying anything. He seemed to be in low spirits. Noah did not say anything to Ryutaru either. He walked up to Takuro, bent down, and looked at the terrified Takuro as his dark eyes slowly narrowed. Then, how should I deal with you? What are you trying to do? Takuro said with a frightened face. I'm warning you. I am the police officer of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. I represent the power of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. If you do anything to me, Fairyland and the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department will completely break apart and become the source of conflict between the 2 countries. Break apart between Fairyland and the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department? Become the source of conflict between the 2 countries? As if amused, Noah could not help but laugh out loud. I say, Mr. Takuro, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Right now, every country in the world should be eager to establish a good relationship with Fairyland, and the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department is Fairyland's only ally. With such a favorable political position, would Fairyland break apart because of a mere police officer like you? Or do you think? Noah grabbed Toshiro's collar, grabbed his tie, and raised his face to his face as he said sarcastically, Or do you think? Would the Son of Heaven go against me because of a piece of trash like you? Takuro's face turned ashen. It was not only because of the despair and fear in his heart, but also because Takuro could not breathe with Noah grabbing his collar like that. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Noah sneered. Didn't you want to build a good relationship with Mugging? I'll let her deal with you then. Takuro's vision turned black and he fainted. Chapter 2151. Tokyo District 1 Saint Residence. Bang! Cupboard Toshiro, who was handcuffed tightly, was escorted into the hall by 2 guards. With a hard push he fell to the ground. Cupboard Toshiro immediately cried out in pain. He was furious. Just as he was about to yell at the guards, he raised his head and saw a few familiar faces. His eyes immediately changed. Cupboard guard. The Elysian stood in front of Cupboard Toshiro, staring at him, her red lips slightly opened. You disappoint me. That one sentence made the change in Cupboard Toshiro's eyes even more obvious. His gaze involuntarily turned to another person. Over there Muging's face was cold, and even faintly angry. I didn't expect you to be a member of Wuxiang Association. Listening to Muging's faintly angry voice, the beautiful face that he coveted had an unprecedented indifference. Cupboard Toshiro's heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife, causing his face to slightly distort. To be treated with such indifference and anger by the woman he had been delusional about conquering, for Cupboard Toshiro, was something worse than death. Not to mention before this Cupboard Toshiro had been planning on how to leave a good impression on Mugging, and even recruit Mugging into his pocket. Therefore, Cupboard Toshiro really had the urge to destroy everything here. However, Cupboard Toshiro did not think that now that she knew the truth, how could Mugging not be hostile to him? It should be noted that ever since Fairyland's existence was exposed a year ago, the Wuxiang Association had been targeting Fairyland all along. As the acting president of Fairyland, Mugging had painstakingly developed Fairyland to its present scale over the past 3 years, only to be targeted by the Wuxiang Association time and time again, resulting in many losses. How could Mugging not be angry at the Wuxiang Association? When she thought of the losses she suffered in the past year because of Wuxiang Association, and even some members who were injured and killed because of it, the anger in Mugging's heart could not be suppressed. Therefore, Mugging took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in her heart, and spoke very coldly to the Elysian. Lord Elysian, can you please hand Cupboard Toshiro over to Fairyland? Hearing this, the Elysian Emperor hesitated. But before Seiji could make a decision, Toshiro exploded. No! Toshiro hysterically screamed from the cupboard. Absolutely impossible. Hand it over to Fairyland? In other words, Tian Tongmu wanted to personally deal with him? Being punished by the woman he had always coveted? Just the thought of it sent Toshiro into a frenzy. Lord Seiji! Toshiro shouted at Seiji. Please don't be fooled by these people. I was wrongly accused. Wronged? Shengzi looked at Toshiro. You were wrongly accused? That's right. Toshiro shouted. I'm not a member of the Wuxiang Association. Furthermore, he did not know what kind of existence the Wuxiang Association was. I'm just following his lordship's orders to help the people of Fairyland. Who would have thought that these people would not only kill all of the self-defense forces? And you're trying to frame me? Lord Holy Son of Heaven. You mustn't listen to these people. What a joke. Ryutaru laughed in anger. What reason do we have to kill the people of the self-defense forces? What reason do we have to frame you? You must have been coveting the right to rule the Tokyo region for a long time. Fairyland wants the world's hegemony. That's something everyone in the world knows. Toshiro shouted in a threatening manner. That's why you took out the self-defense forces first, and even blew up the self-defense forces barracks. You must have planned to destroy the giant stone monument as well, and let the protozoa bathe the Tokyo region in blood. You? Mugento and Ryutaru both looked furious. You bastard! Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yinju were also angry. Only Seiji looked at Toshiro, who was struggling on the brink of death without any joy or sorrow, and said nothing. Instead, he looked at Noah, who had been silent all this while. Noah pursed his lips and said nothing as well. He just went up and grabbed Toshiro's sleeve amidst Toshiro's screams. Rip! Noah tore Toshiro's sleeve completely, exposing Toshiro's arm to the air. Under such circumstances, everyone at the scene saw it for the first time. There was a tattoo on Toshiro's arm. It was a pentagram tattoo decorated with 3 feathers. So you're a high-ranking member of the Wuxiang Association? Noah threw away the sleeve in his hand and glanced at Toshiro. But you're right. After all, he's a police officer of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. If he really wanted to, he could even mobilize the police force of the entire Tokyo region for the Wuxiang Association's use. It's only natural for him to have this level of rank. A pentagram tattoo decorated with feathers. There was no better evidence than this to prove that Toshiro was a member of the Wuxiang Association. Then Police Officer Toshiro, Seiji said in a calm tone. What else do you want to say? Toshiro's expression changed abruptly, and finally, his face turned ashen. This was the so-called "the tide has turned." With just one failure, not only did Toshiro's position no longer exist, he didn't even have a chance to turn things around. What would be waiting for Toshiro next? The answer was not hard to guess. This person will be handed over to Fairyland. Noah announced Toshiro's end with a ruthless voice. After all, for Fairyland, this person who belongs to the Wuxiang Association can be considered a bitter enemy. Understood. Seiji nodded. Although the crime of killing the Self-Defense Forces commander and soldiers and even blowing up the Self-Defense Forces barracks should be judged by the Tokyo region, but in order to obtain more information about the Wuxiang Association, the criminal Toshiro will be handed over to Fairyland. Thank you very much, Lord Seiji. Mugging slightly lowered his head to Seiji, and then immediately looked at Xiashi. Xiashi, contact the association. Let the association send a few police officers to escort Toshiro. In order to prevent the Wuxiang Association from rescuing him halfway, let a few of the higher-ranked IP come over. Understood. Xiashi took out his phone without any objection. Then, before the people of Fairyland arrive, the criminal Toshiro will be detained by us. Seiji ordered to the guards. Take him away and guard him carefully. Yes. The two guards immediately responded, and took Toshiro away. Hee. Toshiro suddenly laughed. That laughter made most of the people present feel uncomfortable. Rintaro's brows were tightly knitted, as he stared at Toshiro. What are you laughing at? Nothing, I just admit defeat. Toshiro seemed to have recovered his normal state of mind, as if he had completely given up everything, shrugged and showed a wicked smile. But don't think that it's over just because you caught me. We, the Wuxiang Association, are destined to conquer the world. The world belongs to us, no one can take it away. Toshiro's fanatical speech made everyone present feel a chill down their spine. Only Noah raised his eyes and looked at Toshiro. Unfortunately, no matter who the world belongs to in the end, it's over for you. Noah slightly raised the corner of his mouth. That can only prove that the world's favor is definitely not you, stupid guy. Toshiro's mouth suddenly twitched, and looked at Noah with eyes that seemed to spit fire, extremely furious. Obviously, Noah poked at Toshiro's biggest sore spot. But no matter how angry Toshiro was, as Noah said, it's over for him. The two guards held Toshiro, regardless of his resistance, and took him away. Mugging and Xiashi followed, probably planning to temporarily verbally interrogate Toshiro, and obtain information about the Wuxiang Association from him. Looking at Mugging's gradually fading back, Rintaro came to Noah's side and whispered, "That matter don't tell Miss Mugging for now." Hearing this, Noah was silent for a while and said so. She will know sooner or later. Then delay it for as long as possible. Rintaro's tone was extremely heavy. If Miss Mugging knows the truth of this matter, she will be very sad. I understand. Noah sighed helplessly. I will find an opportunity to let Mugging prepare herself mentally. Ryutaru smiled and nodded. Chapter 2152. In the dimly lit war room, a black-robed His Excellency sat in front of a monitor, quietly watching the surveillance footage. On the surveillance footage, Cupboard Toshiro was escorted out of the celestial abode by two guards, followed by Mugging and Xiashi. Through the monitor, His Excellency watched Cupboard Toshiro struggle, as he was violently escorted into a prison van by the guards, driven out of the celestial abode. Even Mugging and Xiashi got into a limousine and followed closely behind, his fingers constantly tapping on the table. Behind His Excellency, Li Qingyin and bodyguard Zhuo were also watching this scene, but one of them had an indescribable glint in his eyes under the mask, while the other had an ugly expression, and neither of them spoke. Leech Binet Jr., who was hiding in the corner, shrunk his body timidly, because, around His Excellency Li Qingyin and bodyguard Zhuo, the space seemed to be suppressed by an invisible gravity, and a sense of oppression pervaded the air. Clearly, although the three of them did not speak, their emotions had not calmed down all this time. His Excellency watched Cupboard Toshiro being escorted away in silence. Bodyguard Zhuo wanted to explode, but he knew how dangerous His Excellency's emotions were, so he could only obediently shut his mouth to prevent himself from being implicated. In the end, it was Li Qingyin who broke the silence. If we can't even kill that man this time, it seems that we won't be able to succeed in the future. Li Qingyin laughed softly. How about it? Give up? Give up? Bodyguard Zhuo's eyes twitched and he wanted to shout, "Are you kidding me?" But he was interrupted by His Excellency. Giving up is absolutely impossible. His Excellency stopped tapping his fingers on the table, and although his voice was a little hoarse, he still said without hesitation, "Fairyland is the biggest obstacle to our domination of the world. If we don't overcome it, we will never be able to obtain the world." Giving up on attacking that man is the same as giving up on the world. But even if we don't give up, what else can we do? Li Qingyin spread his hands. Our operation has failed, and even our identities have been exposed. He has already guessed who you are, and even our base can't hide from him. The only choice left is to run away, right? As he spoke, Li Qingyin surveyed his surroundings. The surroundings were so dark that not a single ray of light could be seen. The only source of light was the holographic monitors. The entire war room was in the shape of a fan. In the direction of the entrance was an automatic door made of bulletproof glass. This is the control room that manages the power of the entire Tokyo area, as well as the monitoring system of the entire Tokyo area. Today, Noah and Rintaro came here under the instructions of the Emperor, and with the help of Toshiro of the cabinet, they saw the surveillance video of the meeting between Chiwu Zhongshuan and Soma Zhongxiong. Who would have thought that the hiding place of Sir Li Qingyin and bodyguard Zhuo Ren was also this place? However, this wasn't anything strange. In the Tokyo area, there are surveillance cameras everywhere. If you want to find a place to hide, you have to go to the periphery or enter the sewers. Otherwise, you will definitely be exposed. However, Your Excellency and your group did not go there. Instead, they openly stayed in the control room that managed all the surveillance images. The most dangerous place was the safest place. With Toshiro of the cabinet as a spy, it was normal for him to provide this place for Your Excellency and your group to use. After all, Your Excellency and your group would be able to see Noah and his group's every move at any time. Now that Toshiro of the cabinet has been exposed and arrested, that man will definitely suspect this place, right? Li Qingyin said nonchalantly. What can we do if we continue to stay here? In other words, you don't plan to do anything? Your Excellency turned his head and looked at Li Qingyin. His voice was somewhat sinister. Are you going to betray the Wuxiang Association? Betray? Li Qingyin laughed, a laugh that made people tremble. I am not a member of the Wuxiang Association. The reason why I helped you was because of Professor Grunewald, and also because I thought that this would cause chaos in Fairyland and cause all the countries in the world to be involved in the disputes of Fairyland. If I think that you don't have the ability to start a war, then I will just leave. What's wrong with that? Hearing this, Zhuo Meng cursed in his heart. You're a madman. Yes, Li Qingyin was not a member of the Wuxiang Association. All of Li Qingyin's actions were to start a war, to destroy the world, to let his ability as a mechanical soldier have a place to use, to prove the meaning of his existence. Li Qingyin had said before that killing was the meaning of his creation as a mechanical soldier. Therefore, this person whose heart was already broken, in order to prove the meaning of his existence, would not hesitate to start a war and destroy the world. Living in blood and tears. This was Li Qingyin's pursuit, and also Li Qingyin's desire. Apart from this, Li Qingyin did not care about anything else. Therefore, although bodyguard Zhuo Ren was also a mechanical soldier, he was afraid of Li Qingyin, not only because he was not as strong as Li Qingyin, but also because of Li Qingyin's crazy idea, which made bodyguard Zhuo Ren feel fear from the bottom of his heart. However, Li Qingyin's idea, which helped Your Excellency in the past, now threatens Your Excellency. Thus, Your Excellency looked at Li Qingyin and said, "Do you think that I will agree to you leaving halfway like this?" So, Li Qingyin pressed on his hat and laughed in a low voice. Does Your Excellency want to use the rules of the Wuxiang Association to teach me the fate of useless people? The atmosphere in the air suddenly became extremely dangerous. Sensing this atmosphere, Binet the leech was no longer timid. His eyes turned scarlet, and he put his hand on the odachi. Bodyguard Zhuo Ren was about to break out in cold sweat. Heavens! What is Your Excellency thinking? Isn't it very dangerous to start a conflict with Li Qingyin at this time? It has to be known that although Your Excellency is a top member of the Wuxiang Association, you are just an ambitious person without any strength. Once Li Qingyin is truly angered and attacks Your Excellency without the slightest scruple, who will deal with him? Himself? He will definitely be killed. Thinking of this, bodyguard Zhuo Ren's face became ashen. Even if his facial muscles were made of super alloy, one could still faintly see the green color. Just as bodyguard Zhuo Ren was secretly breaking out in cold sweat, a phone rang. Your Excellency immediately withdrew his gaze and no longer paid attention to Li Qingyin. He took out his phone and picked it up. As soon as the phone was picked up, A powerful and heavy voice came from the other side. Did the plan fail? You already know? Your Excellency was silent for a while, then spoke indifferently. The plan has indeed failed. Noah Dole is still alive. I am thinking about what to do next. Damn it. The voice on the other side became annoyed. Even this can't kill that man. The protector of monsters is indeed a monster. Do you have any ideas? Your Excellency directly asked. Is there a way to kill Noah Dole? If there was, I wouldn't have cooperated with you and invited a mere commander of the Tokyo Self-Defense Forces and put on a show like this. The voice on the other side changed from annoyance to anger. You already let me participate in the plan, but it still failed. How are you going to compensate me? Enough with the nonsense. Getting rid of Noah Dole is something we must do, His Excellency said in a displeased tone. I don't believe that you're willing to let that kid live forever. Then what do you think our next step should be? The voice on the other side began to calm down. The attack this time failed. With that man's ability, he must have gotten a lot of information. If we don't make a decision now, we will definitely be killed by that man in the end. I know. Your Excellency sighed. Then do you have any good ideas? As soon as he finished speaking, the other side remained silent. Your Excellency sensed that something was wrong. What's wrong with you? Hearing this, the other side of the phone still did not make any sound. Gradually, Your Excellency had a bad feeling in his heart. In the next second, the powerful and heavy voice on the other side of the phone trembled slightly. Noah Dole. What? Your Excellency was stunned. However, the next sentence caused His Excellency's mind to fall into a complete daze. He is with me. Chapter 2153. On the top floor of an international hotel in Tokyo. In an extremely luxurious suite, Chiwu Zhongshuan was sitting on the sofa, with red wine and wine glasses on the glass table in front of him. The scarlet liquid shone in the wine bottle and glass. When the light shone on Chiwu Zhongshuan's face, it illuminated his majestic face. However, at this moment, his face seemed to have lost all color and became extremely pale. Upon closer inspection, Chiwu Zhongshuan was holding a phone in his hand and talking to someone. Sitting opposite Chiwu Zhongshuan was a man who picked up a bottle of red wine and a new glass from under the table beside him. He poured the scarlet liquid into the glass and drank leisurely while speaking to Chiwu Zhongshuan casually. Don't mind me. You can do your own thing. After saying those words, Noah began to drink his wine. He appeared to be very carefree and relaxed. However, Chiwu Zhongshuan's heart was trembling violently. He could not help but tremble. This was because Chiwu Zhongshuan didn't even know how Noah had appeared, when he had appeared, or when he had sat across from him. Chiwu Zhongshuan was only on the phone, and when he noticed, Noah had appeared there without anyone noticing and was drinking leisurely. How could Chiwu Zhongshuan not be shocked by such a phenomenon? On the other side of the phone, Chiwu Zhongshuan seemed to have understood what was going on and did not speak again. Under such circumstances, the entire luxurious suite was extremely quiet. No, it could only be described as dead silence. Just like Chiwu Zhongshuan's heart, the surroundings were completely cold. This kind of coldness made Chiwu Zhongshuan feel as if he had returned to 3 years ago when he was chased by Noah. In the end, under the threat of Noah, he had no choice but to obey, which drove Chiwu Zhongshuan crazy. However, Noah did not seem to feel any of this. He continued to pour wine and drink like a guest who had already arrived, quietly savoring the taste of the wine and the surrounding peace. Little did he know that this attitude was the reason why Chiwu Zhongshuan's heart felt colder and colder. No one knew how long this deathly silence lasted. At a certain moment, Noah finally spoke. What? Are you not going to continue the call? Noah looked at Chiwu Zhongshuan, swirling the red wine in his hand with a smile on his face. Then, do you want to talk to me? At that moment, Chiwu Zhongshuan really wanted to say no. However, Chiwu Zhongshuan also knew that he had no other choice. Thus, Chiwu Zhongshuan silently hung up the phone. In the control room, His Excellency put away his phone and remained silent. Li Qingyin and Bao Weizhorn didn't say anything either, but their hearts were filled with a cold feeling. Binet Leach Jr. looked at this scene in confusion. He didn't seem to understand the current situation. Not long after, His Excellency spoke in a hoarse voice. Let's leave this place immediately. Hearing His Excellency's words, Li Qingyin didn't say anything, but Zhuorun asked subconsciously, Where were we going? To the outer area, His Excellency said without hesitation. This place is completely unsafe. Then what about President Qiwu? Bao Wei Zhuorun asked with a trembling voice. What about President Qiwu? Qiwu. His Excellency didn't know if it was because he was sad or because he had given up on himself. He's finished. I'm finished. In the luxurious suite of the hotel, Qiwu Zhongshuan stared at Noah and spoke in a deep voice. You're here to kill me, right? Hearing this, Noah didn't admit or deny it. He just continued to drink red wine and remained silent. This made Qiwu Zhongshuan feel more and more pressure in his heart. Even his back was dripping with cold sweat. At this moment, Qiwu Zhongshuan suddenly understood how the death row prisoners felt. This was because the feeling he had now was exactly the same as that of a criminal on death row who was about to be executed. The feeling of waiting for death was really crazy. In contrast, the desire to live would also increase like never before. Before this desire to live, Qiwu Zhongshuan had wanted to escape countless times, but he forcibly suppressed it. This was because Qiwu Zhongshuan knew that he couldn't escape. 3 years ago, Noah gave Qiwu Zhongshuan an hour to escape and then chase after him. In the end, Qiwu Zhongshuan still couldn't escape from Noah. Thinking back to the horror at that time, Qiwu Zhongshuan really couldn't think of any way to escape under such circumstances. However, Qiwu Zhongshuan definitely didn't want to die. He still had his own ambitions to fulfill. Speak, Qiwu Zhongshuan said self-deprecatingly. This time what will make you let me go? This sentence made Noah stop pouring wine and look at Qiwu Zhongshuan. Wuxia Association, Noah said faintly as Qiwu Zhongshuan's pupils shrank. I want all the information about this organization. Qiwu Zhongshuan's heart trembled again. Don't tell me that you don't know. Noah looked at Qiwu Zhongshuan with a faint smile. The ruler of the Osaka region, a standard dictator, an ambitious schemer with the ultimate goal of world hegemony. If you say that you are not one of the top operatives of the Wuxia Association, do you think that I will believe you? After that, Noah suddenly pointed at Qiwu Zhongshuan's sleeve. Bang! Qiwu Zhongshuan's sleeve suddenly exploded without any reason, turning into pieces of cloth scattered around. Just like Toshiro, Qiwu Zhongshuan's arm was directly exposed to the air. On that arm there was a pentagram tattoo decorated with 5 feathers. You? Qiwu Zhongshuan couldn't help but stand up and tightly cover his tattoo. He looked at Noah with horror in his eyes. Obviously, Qiwu Zhongshuan was frightened by Noah's means. Undoubtedly, he didn't even touch it. How did this person blow up his sleeve? Could it be that this person was really a monster? Thinking of this, Qiwu Zhongshuan's heart was filled with fear. Of course, Qiwu Zhongshuan couldn't guess Noah's means no matter what. After all, Qiwu Zhongshuan was just an ordinary person who couldn't sense magic power at all. Noah just sent a trace of magic power to Qiwu Zhongshuan's sleeve and crushed it. In the eyes of ordinary people, this means was naturally called a superpower. Therefore, Noah just let the expression on his face become more and more thought-provoking. Although I can't explain it to you clearly, if I point like this, your sleeve will be blown up by me. Noah narrowed his eyes and slowly raised his finger. Tell me, if I point this finger at your head, what will happen? Qiwu Zhongshuan's breathing suddenly became rapid. The shadow of death, which was invisible to the naked eye, seemed to be looming over Qiwu Zhongshuan as it swallowed him up bit by bit. Bastard! Qiwu Zhongshuan finally broke down. Under the fear in his heart, Qiwu Zhongshuan suddenly pulled out the pistol in his arms, pointed at Noah, and pulled the trigger repeatedly. Bang 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 bang. Clear gunshots burst out from the muzzle, and bullets shot in the direction of Noah like raindrops. However, when the bullets were less than 5 centimeters away from Noah's body, they disintegrated as though they were made of clay. White lights flashed one after another as they shattered one after another, turning into countless tiny cubes that could not be distinguished by the naked eye before they scattered like dust. Qiwu Zhongshuan, whose eyesight couldn't keep up with the speed of the bullets, couldn't see anything at all. He just crazily pulled the trigger and shot, shattering the bullets one after another. Kacha kacha! Not long after, such a sound came from the gun in Qiwu Zhongshuan's hand. All the bullets had been used up. As for Noah, he was completely unharmed. Chi! Smoke rose from the muzzle of Qiwu Zhongshuan's pistol. Qiwu Zhongshuan's expression was sluggish. Looking at Noah, who was sitting there unharmed and looking at him with a playful expression, Qiwu Zhongshuan seemed to have lost all his strength. The gun in his hand slipped down and fell heavily to the ground. Noah slowly stood up. Without even looking at Qiwu Zhongshuan, he directly flew out of the window. Qiwu Zhongshuan was left standing there with his eyes wide open. The light spear on Qiwu Zhongshuan's chest gradually disappeared. Fresh blood flowed out from the hideous bloody hole. Chapter 2154. Back in the holy house, Noah was immediately called by Rintaro. "You didn't find them?" In the hallway of the holy house, Noah heard Rintaro's report and couldn't help but curl his lips. It seems that they ran away when they saw the situation wasn't good. They probably escaped to the periphery. When Toshiro was escorted to the police station, Noah directly flew to the International Hotel to find Qiwu Zhongshuan. Before leaving, Noah asked Rintaro to track the call between His Excellency and Toshiro from the Self-Defense Forces barracks, and finally track them to the Central Control and Development Agency. After that, Rintaro and Yenju headed there without stopping to rest. However, when Rintaro and Yenju arrived, the Central Control and Development Agency's control room was already empty. "What should we do now?" Rintaro said with some annoyance. "If the Wuxiang Association's people escape to the periphery, then it will be difficult." The outer perimeter was just a wasteland. It was messy and there were no surveillance cameras installed. If they wanted to find a few people, although it was not like looking for a needle in a haystack, they had to be prepared to turn the entire outer perimeter upside down. "It will be difficult to find them." Noah shook his head. "If the Holy Son of Heaven can send enough people, then it's one thing, but the problem is that the Tokyo area is a mess. The commander of the Self-Defense Forces, Soma Munio, was killed, and the Self-Defense Forces headquarters was also bombed, and none of the Self-Defense Forces soldiers survived. The police inspector of the Metropolitan Police Department is a spy, and belongs to the mysterious organization called the Five Xiang Association. This has caused a huge uproar in the entire police community, and it is very noisy. In other words, the Tokyo area's government forces, the self-defense forces, and the Metropolitan Police Department were all in chaos, and they couldn't do anything else for a while. Now, the Holy Son of Heaven has begun to order my weaver to lead the Sima family's officials to thoroughly investigate the Toshiro family, and to stabilize the order of the self-defense forces to prevent panic. With this investigation, they really found a clue. Not knowing if it was because of Noah, the Holy Son of Heaven ordered my weaver to thoroughly investigate the Toshiro family, and first to check whether the Toshiro family had the tattoo of Wuxiang Association. As a result, Toshiro's father was dragged out. Toshiro's father is the current chief police officer of the Metropolitan Police Department, which is equivalent to Soma Munio's position in the self-defense forces. He is the chief police officer who leads the entire Metropolitan Police Department. Such a top figure in the police world was actually a member of a terrorist organization, which had long since caused the entire police world to be in chaos. Because of this, Wei Ji even led the Sima family's high-ranking officials to thoroughly investigate everyone in the police force. In addition, the self-defense forces lost their commander and the power of an entire military camp. Today, the government forces in the Tokyo area can be said to be completely paralyzed. Now, if someone were to call the police, perhaps no one would even answer. Now, if someone were to attack the Tokyo area, perhaps even the guards would not be able to react in time. One could only imagine how chaotic the situation was between the Metropolitan Police Department and the self-defense forces. However, that was to be expected. Just like if Noah and Mugging were to fall, the entire fairyland would fall into chaos, giving the Wuxiang Association an opportunity to take advantage of. That's why the Wuxiang Association desperately wanted to get rid of Noah and Mugging. Toshiro's father and Soma Munio, one was the commander of the Metropolitan Police Department, the other was the commander of the self-defense forces, but one betrayed and one died. How could the Metropolitan Police Department and the self-defense forces not fall into chaos? Not to mention, now that the father and son of the Cupboard family had joined the Wuxiang Association, who knew how many people in the Metropolitan Police Department were spies that they had planted in the Wuxiang Association? The self-defense forces headquarters had been completely blown up, with heavy casualties. If this wasn't chaos, then when would it be? Will the Tokyo area be completely destroyed? Therefore, the Holy Son of Heaven and Wei Ji were already very busy. Before the Metropolitan Police Department and the self-defense forces stabilized, the Tokyo area's government forces would be paralyzed. Fortunately, there won't be any country that wants to attack here, or else the Tokyo area would definitely be finished. Rentaro's tone was a little complicated. I didn't think that the Tokyo area would be so messed up by the Wuxia Association. If Fairyland didn't appear, perhaps, this mysterious organization could really get the world's hegemony. So I can't even see the world anymore. Perhaps this is the reason why I came here. Noah smiled faintly, with a voice that only he could hear. He slightly murmured. It seems that before leaving this world, my mission, other than completely developing Fairyland into the cursed child's ideal home, is to uproot the Wuxia Association. Compared to other worlds in this world, Noah's concerns were undoubtedly more comparable to the world of Fairy's Tale. If the Wuxia Association was left alone, who knows how many people in Fairyland would be hurt because of them. This was the last world that Noah could stay in before the final battle. In order to not leave any regrets, Noah would definitely not let the Wuxia Association go unpunished. Therefore, after confirming that Qiwu Zhongshuan was a top operative of the Wuxia Association, Noah directly killed him. In any case, Noah had wanted to kill this dictator for a long time, otherwise, he really didn't know if he would secretly do something to Fairyland for his own ambitions. As for Sir, this person was probably also a top operative of the Wuxia Association. Moreover, his ambitions were not small, and his identity was somewhat special. However, as long as he wanted to harm Fairyland, then Noah would definitely not show mercy. He believed that Mugino and Rentaro must have thought so too. Thinking of this, Noah made a prompt decision. Rentaro. Noah suddenly spoke. Tell Mugino it's time for the guild to move. Move? Rentaro was surprised. You want to transfer people from the guild to the Tokyo area? That's right. Noah nodded. Since the Tokyo area's government forces are paralyzed, and now they can't even take care of themselves, and have no way to deal with the Wuxia Association, then let us do it ourselves. But, is this appropriate? Rentaro was a little moved, but also a little hesitant. This is the Tokyo area after all. If we send a large number of people to intervene, it will cause a lot of problems, right? Just like when a country sends its army to another country, the other country will definitely think that the other party intends to attack them, and will not allow it. Even if the Holy Son of Heaven approves, the officials and ordinary people will wantonly oppose, and eventually lead to disputes. In this regard, Noah naturally understood. But before our guild is an independent country, we first face the world's civil society. Noah smiled slightly. Now that the entire Tokyo area's government forces are paralyzed, the defense of the Tokyo area is almost zero. In order to prevent the Tokyo area from being attacked, the Holy Son of Heaven issued a commission to Fairyland, and let Fairyland temporarily take care of the Tokyo area, so it's justified, right? Will it work? Rentaro was even more moved and hesitant. There should still be some people with groundless fears who will think that allowing the people of Fairyland to act as they please in the Tokyo area may threaten the Tokyo area, right? As long as there's a reason, it's fine. Noah directly asserted. What does it have to do with me what those people with groundless fears think? With that, Noah walked away without looking back, leaving Rentaro stunned. However, right after that, Ryutaru smiled. As expected of the president of Fairyland, he reminds me of the cursed child shelter who stood firm and protected his own people even in the face of the condemnation of the entire Tokyo area, and finally saved the Tokyo area. With that, Rentaro took out his phone and dialed Muging's number. Tokyo area police headquarters. In an interrogation room, Muging hung up her cell phone, and a beautiful smile appeared on her delicate doll-like face, which made Toshiro in the cupboard opposite her dazed. But in the next second, Muging's words made Toshiro's eyes widen. Xia sure. Contact the guild. For the first time, Muging acted like a leader, and ordered Xia sure beside her. 10 pairs of S-grade police officers. 30 pairs of A-grade police officers. 50 pairs of B-grade police officers. 100 pairs of C-grade police officers. 300 pairs of D-grade police officers. 500 pairs of E-grade police officers. A total of 990 pairs of police officers, And all of them must arrive in the Tokyo area by this time tomorrow. Mugen glanced at the wide-eyed Toshiro and said, "This is the president's order." Toshiro's heart really started to tremble. The world was changing. Chapter 2155. The sky gradually darkened. Fairyland was brightly lit. Every skyscraper had its lights turned on, illuminating every corner of the city. Cars came and went. Pedestrians came and went. Even at night, the prosperity of the entire fairyland could still be glimpsed from the phenomenon brimming with life, preventing even the chilly night winds from blowing away the warmth of the city. Here, the most common people were children. Moreover, they were children of all ages. Some of these children were laughing like normal people, while some could not control the ability in their body, causing their pupils to show a scarlet color, but they were still laughing. It was believed that such a scene could only be seen in this incredible fairyland. And in this inconceivable fairyland, the most common saying was that, "When my ability is fully awakened, I'll join the fairy tale guild and become a starter." Almost all the children who could speak had said this before. This was because, to these children, a guild named Fairy Tale was no different from a holy land. Every child hoped that they could join the Fairy Tale Guild. Every child hoped that they could become a starter. As time passed, joining the Fairy Tale Guild became the dream of all the cursed children. Therefore, every child in Fairyland would look in one direction almost every day when they were free, with longing and yearning in their eyes. In that direction there was the tallest skyscraper in the world. The Fairy Tale Guild was based in that skyscraper. Of course, these children did not know. At this moment, the interior of the skyscraper had long been in chaos. The skyscrapers belonging to Fairy Tale were generally open during the day, and the night was their rest time. Of course, at this time in the Fairy Tale headquarters building, the bustling scene during the day had subsided. However, around the skyscraper in the center of Fairyland, pairs of police officers rushed over and gathered in the first-floor office hall of Fairy Tale. Not long after, the spacious office hall was filled with people, appearing especially lively and noisy. What the hell is going on? I don't know, but it must be something big. I was just about to shower and sleep when the guild called and told me to gather here. I almost forgot to put on my pants. I received the call too. Me too. Seems like everyone. In the office hall, many of the facilitators were discussing. And while the facilitators were discussing, so were the starters. There was an emergency gathering like this last time, right? But there were no facilitators that time, only us starters. Then the guild issued that thing, what's it called again? Artificial Divine Artifact. Yes, Artificial Divine Artifact. And only the starters of the S-Class and A-Class police teams have it, right? Then they went to wipe out the protozoa. Could it be this time as well? It would be great if that were the case. I heard that the artifact was developed by the president to increase our strength. Really? Can increase in ability? And it was developed by the guild leader. What should we do? I want it so much. That's right. The starters were all in an uproar, causing the whole place to become noisy and lively. Until a certain moment in the office hall, the sound of the broadcast began to sound. Everyone, please be quiet. Hearing this voice, all the police officers shut their mouths, causing the extremely lively hall a second ago to suddenly become silent. After 3 years of development, the police officers belonging to the Fairy Tale Guild were similar to the Magic Guide Guild. Not only were the management methods very similar, but even the way they acted was also very similar. Usually they had a high degree of freedom, but when there was an emergency, their cohesion was stronger than anyone else's. This was a guild. Just like the community in the box court under the same flag, they were a group, all of them were classmates and family. Under such circumstances, the broadcast began again. According to the advisor of the guild leader of Longevity Summer, we are now transmitting the order to gather 10 pairs of S-Class police officers, 30 pairs of A-Class police officers, 50 pairs of B-Class police officers, 100 pairs of C-Class police officers, 300 pairs of D-Class police officers, 500 pairs of E-Class police officers, a total of 990 pairs of police officers. Immediately head to the Tokyo area. The content from the broadcast surprised all the police officers present. What's going on? Why are so many police officers suddenly gathered? And they're heading to the Tokyo area? Could it be that something happened in the Tokyo area? The pairs of police officers all began to talk about it. In the past, the guild had issued many summons, but never on such a large scale. Moreover, the level of the police officers gathered was shocking. Level S was the top 300 IP rankings. Level A was the top 1000 IP rankings. Level B was the top 3000 IP rankings. Level C was the top 5000 IP rankings. Level D was the top 10,000 IP rankings. Level E was the top 10,000 IP rankings. In other words, this time there were 40 police officers in the top 1000 IP rankings. Among them, there were even 10 teams of S-class police officers in the top 300 IP rankings. This level of strength was enough to attack a small country. While the group of police officers were talking about it, the broadcast sounded again. Based on the judgment of the higher-ups of the situation, the police forces sent this time must be partners with the top IP rankings under the circumstances of the number and level of police officers sent. Therefore, within the number of teams sent, the members with the top IP rankings of the same level will carry out this mission. 10 pairs of S-class police officers will be occupied by the top 10 pairs of S-class police officers in the guild. 30 pairs of A-class police officers will be occupied by the top 30 pairs of A-class police officers in the guild. And so on, the police officers with the top IP rankings of each level, and within the number of teams mentioned, will participate in this mission and head to the Tokyo area. Execution time is immediate. After the broadcast ends, all police teams who receive the notice should rush to the airport and be picked up by the guild's special plane. With that said, the voice in the broadcast began to show emotion for the first time. The above orders are personally issued by President Noah. All members must not delay. I repeat. Hearing the last sentence of the broadcast, the police officers who were in a heated discussion all stopped talking and opened their eyes wide. What did they just say? What did the broadcast say just now? President Noah personally issued the order? All the police officers looked at each other. Then, all kinds of emotions appeared in the eyes of the promoters and initiators. President. The president personally issued the order. In other words, we can finally see the president. That's great. At this moment, almost all the police officers cheered. Although there were all kinds of emotions in everyone's heart, there was definitely one that was missing. Joy. Because to fairy tale, Noah was simply a legend. This sentence was not an exaggeration at all. Powerful. Mysterious. This was the image of Noah in the hearts of everyone in fairy tale. I've long heard that the president came back not long ago and even showed his skills at the international conference, making the representatives of those countries feel dejected. Now, the president has personally issued the order to gather in the Tokyo area. Coupled with the scale of this order, there must be a big operation. Is it to annihilate a country? Is it to annihilate a second Mozambique? Or is it to show who the boss is? The guild members were somewhat excited and the corners of their mouths twitched. Then, at a certain moment, they reached a consensus. Let's go. Let's go. Head to the Tokyo area. The people who received the notice all began to rush to the airport aggressively. Chapter 2156. Tokyo Area Hotel. In a room that was not too luxurious, Noah had just finished washing up and putting on his clothes. After playing around with Aster, Athena, Orpheus and Lilith for a while, he received a call. When he picked up the call, Muging's voice came from the other side. President, everyone is here. It's time for you to make an appearance, right? Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows. Everyone is here already? Noah gave the order last night. Right now, the sun had just risen, and all the people who had been gathered had already arrived. There are a total of 100 military helicopters for direct transport. How long do you think it will take? Mugging said. So hurry up and come. Got it. Noah smiled. I'll be right there. The police were divided into two groups, the promoter and the initiator. If there were 990 pairs of police officers, then there would be close to 2,000 people. At this moment, 2,000 police officers were neatly lined up in a vast square, looking forward. There was a high platform in front of them. On the platform, Mugging and Rentaro were standing. Even Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yinzhu were there. Mugging was the acting president of Fairy Tale. Rentaro was the leader of Fairy Tale's tour group. In other words, Both of them were high-ranking members of Fairy Tail, and both of them had rendered meritorious service. As for Tina, Xiaoshi, and Yanzhu, their positions in Fairy Tail weren't low either. Tina was the initiator of Fairy Tail's president, and she was also the strongest person in the IP ranking. Xiaoshi was the initiator of Fairy Tail's acting president, and he was also the president's consultant. Yanzhu was the initiator of Fairy Tail's tour group leader, and her IP ranking was also in the top 10. Of course, everyone was qualified to be on the platform. However, in the middle of Muging's group, the seat was empty. There was only one flag fluttering in the wind. On the flag, there was the guild emblem Fairy Tail. Everyone silently gazed at the flag that represented their guilds. Although the expressions on their faces were different, a solemn atmosphere pervaded the air. No one said a word. No one left the formation. The members of the guild, who had originally enjoyed a high degree of freedom, were now like the most orderly army, quietly lining up. Even the younger initiators weren't fooling around. Instead, their youthful faces were filled with seriousness. In a building next to the square, Elysium and Weiji were both here. Elysium looked through the window at the neatly lined-up police officers. Elysium with admiration. Is this the police of Fairy Tail? The reason why Shang Tianzi said this was not because this was the first time he had seen Fairy Tail. In the past, Elysium had seen a lot of Fairy Tail's police officers. However, seeing Fairy Tail's police officers in this way gave Elysium a different feeling. What were police officers? In the eyes of many people, they were just a group of criminals who could carry weapons with them. Even in a police company, police officers were only employed as employees, not as lackeys of the company. Therefore, most of the police officers did what they wanted and were extremely unscrupulous. At least it was like this in the past. Compared to those police companies, the police officers belonging to Fairy Tail's guild also had a lot of freedom. However, the quality of the police officers that joined Fairy Tail was higher than the police and soldiers. They were so orderly that it was as if one order could make everyone risk their lives for him. Elysium could not help but sigh. Of course, what made Elysium sigh was the quality of the police officers. A lot of them are famous people. Elysium murmured. Is this the power of a force that can seize the world's hegemony? It's just a part of it. Looking at the pairs of police officers in the square below, Weiji unfolded the iron fan in her hand and covered the lower half of her face so that no one could see her expression. According to the Sima family statistics of Fairyland's police force, the large force below probably doesn't even account for half of Fairy Tail's power, right? Hearing that, Elysium could not help but recall the initiator team that Noah deployed during Fairyland's annihilation operation at the last international conference. That team was able to easily conquer one of the 3 demon realms, which was known as one of the 3 demon realms. It was called an operation that saved the world. At that time, more than half of the initiators belonging to Fairy Tail's top 1,000 were mobilized. And now, among the police officers lined up below, there were only 10 pairs of S-class police officers ranked in the top 300, and only 30 A-class police officers ranked in the top 1,000. Compared to the 600 initiators who were ranked in the top 1,000 at that time, the quality was undoubtedly not that great. Probably considering that Fairyland also needs someone to defend it, that's why they only deployed this level of force. Weiji glanced at Mugung, who was standing on the platform, her tone more or less displeased. Undoubtedly, he's a pauper. I really don't know why he would be so considerate. Obviously, Wei Weaver had guessed that the quality and quantity were sent by Mugung after careful consideration. From now on, the cursed children will all be sent to Fairyland. In other words, the initiators will become a force unique to Fairyland, and all police officers will naturally be monopolized by Fairyland. Weiji said with a half-smile. So this might be the last time we see so many police officers gathered in the Tokyo area. Lord Elysium, you must remember this scene well, okay? Elysium nodded, and his gaze turned to look at the platform. To be more precise, he was looking at the position of the Fairy Tail flag. Looking at the flag fluttering in the wind, Elysium could not help but smile. As expected of the guild that man single-handedly founded, just as Elysium's voice trailed off, the atmosphere in the privet square suddenly changed. Whoosh! Amidst the clear sound of something breaking through the air, a stream of light suddenly burst from the other side of the sky, like a flash of light, piercing through the sky and landing directly in the direction of the privet square. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, the flash of light from the sky was like a bolt of lightning, landing in front of the flag on the platform, setting off waves of air that spread in all directions. Everyone was shocked, and quickly raised their hands to block in front of them. On the platform, Mu Geng, Rentaro, Hina, Yanju, and Xiashi were also shocked, and raised their hands to block in front of them, resisting the expanding air wave. Whoosh! The whistling wind blew past the high platform, the square, and the surrounding buildings. Elysian Sun and Unweaver were both surprised to see this. After an unknown amount of time, the whistling wind finally stopped. Only then did everyone present raise their heads and look in the direction of the high platform with a fearful expression on their faces. The next moment, everyone was stunned. Because at the place where the stream of light fell, where the wind burst out, a person appeared out of nowhere. Fairy Tail. Reaching out, he gently stroked the flag fluttering in the wind. Looking at the coat of arms on the flag, Noah's heart was filled with an incredible calmness. For Noah, this was the symbol of home. No matter which world he was in, it was the same. After stroking the flag fluttering in the wind, Noah turned around. The faces of all the police officers present turned red. Oh! Cheers resounded through the sky. Chapter 2157. Oh! The police officers belonging to Fairy Tail were all cheering loudly, venting their excitement. It couldn't be helped. The way Noah appeared was too shocking for these police officers who had always regarded him as a legend. That kind of appearance was either not done by humans or could only be called magic. Therefore, the pairs of police officers felt unusually excited and couldn't help but cheer loudly. Under such circumstances, Tina, Xiashi, and Yanju also seemed to have been affected by this as they raised their hands high into the air and cheered loudly. Mugging and Rentaro looked at each other and smiled helplessly. You did it on purpose, right? It's definitely intentional. Both Mugging and Rentaro could tell that Noah was trying to boost morale. If the Fairy Tail police officers were to carry out their mission in high spirits, they would probably get twice the result with half the effort, right? Even Elysium and Unwoven, who were watching this scene from the building, saw it. After a moment of shock, they smiled. Really, he's always full of surprises. As expected of the man I've taken a fancy to. Little Noah, you're really something. Although I didn't know how Noah did it, he was an existence that was able to defeat even the Zodiac Stage V and the Protozoa army in one blow. No matter how inconceivable it would seem natural, right? Before Noah displayed a power that was different from this world. This sense of mystery would always attract others, reassuring their companions and making their enemies fearful. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why Noah had never revealed his power to the public in this world. Those who didn't know much about it could only feel admiration or fear. Only a fool like Shuo Weiwei would feel disdain for it, right? On the high platform, Noah, whose back was facing the Fairy Tail flag, looked down at his guild members who were cheering loudly. A hint of satisfaction flashed across his deep, dark eyes. Then he slowly raised his hand. The group of cheering police officers immediately stopped talking, letting the cheers come and go as quickly as they came. Silence returned to the privet square. However, every member of Fairy Tail still looked at Noah with eyes full of excitement, telling Noah how high their spirits were. Under everyone's excited and yearning gazes, Noah spoke softly. His voice spread out in an unbelievable manner, echoing in the air above the entire soldier square. I believe that many of you here are seeing me for the first time, right? Many people nodded their heads repeatedly. 3 years ago, the guild called Fairy Tail was just a civilian organization in the Tokyo area. Although because of Noah's management, this non-governmental organization is the largest force in the Tokyo area. But that is only relative to the Tokyo area. Now 3 years had passed. In these 3 years, it wasn't as if no one had left Fairy Tail. However, compared to the people who left, there were undoubtedly more people who joined. Otherwise, Fairyland would not be unprecedentedly prosperous, and be known as the world's strongest independent country, where world hegemony was within reach. Of course, even if there were no people who had stayed 3 years ago under Noah's leadership until now, compared to the unprecedentedly grand Fairy Tail, the number was shockingly small. In addition, the police force that was deployed was only a small part of Fairy Tail's strength, so naturally, there were very few old members who had seen Noah before. However, for everyone, Noah was just a mystery, and they were not unfamiliar with him. Because in the guild, Everyone had heard of Noah's deeds along the way. So, I won't introduce myself or anything like that, Noah said as if he saw through everyone's thoughts. This time, I've gathered everyone in the Tokyo area mainly for two things. The first thing, I'm sure everyone has heard about it from the news and such, is the problem of the political power in the Tokyo area being paralyzed. Noah looked down at the people below with disdain. Due to the infiltration and attacks of terrorists, the Tokyo area is currently facing an awkward situation where there is no military power that can be used. If this continues, the Tokyo area may fall into panic and chaos, and the consequences are unimaginable. The Tokyo area is the only ally of Fairyland. Since our ally has such a problem, we should provide some help. Noah's voice entered everyone's ears. Therefore, the first thing is, until the military power in the Tokyo area is restored, we Fairy Tail will be responsible for the police and soldiers, and help the Tokyo area to maintain the order of the entire Tokyo area. Hearing this, everyone finally understood. So, it was because of this that so many police officers were deployed to the Tokyo area? Of course, this is a voluntary job. There is no pay, no reward, and it is likely to be a bit difficult. Noah said to everyone, if you are unwilling to carry out this mission, you can raise your hand now. If you don't raise your hand, then you are not allowed to quit halfway. As soon as his voice fell, the audience was silent. No one raised their hand. Everyone looked at Noah with a smile and expressed their inner thoughts. In this regard, Noah also smiled slightly and nodded. As for how to carry out this mission, the acting president of Tiantong and President Chisho will arrange it. When the time comes, everyone will act according to the instructions. At this point, Noah's tone suddenly turned indifferent. In addition to this mission, I will give you a second mission. Noah's sudden change in tone stunned the police officers of Fairy Tail. In the next second, Noah's words made everyone's expression change slightly. Wuxia Association. Noah narrowed his eyes. This name, everyone should be familiar with it. Everyone widened their eyes, and then a touch of hatred flashed across their eyes. For the general public, the existence of a terrorist organization naturally would not be spread. However, for the police officers of Fairy Tail, they had long heard of this name. After all, in the past year, the police of Fairy Tail who went to all over the world to carry out missions were repeatedly targeted by Wuxiang Association, causing a lot of casualties. In this way, how could the police of Fairy Tail not know about this mysterious organization? According to the information obtained, one of the top operatives and some of the operatives belonging to Wuxiang Association are now in the Tokyo area. Noah said indifferently, I am not going to let them go. Her words made all the members of Fairy Tail's blood boil with excitement. During this period of time, you need to maintain order in the Tokyo area, and you need to find these people of Wuxiang Association. Noah said word by word. No matter what method is used, don't even let go of the peripheral area. Do a carpet search. It's best if you can find their base. If you find their base, then immediately report it. Noah raised the corner of his mouth. Let us wipe them all out. Hearing this sentence, the police of Fairy Tail all laughed. Yes. In the next moment, a chorus of responses resounded through the entire private square. Although it was a bit different, should it be said that they were worthy of being the people of Fairy Tail? Thinking back to their comrades who were injured or even killed by the Five Xiang Association, in the past, the hearts of the police officers were burning with fighting spirit. Even if it was for the sake of their comrades, they must not let Wuxiang Association go. This was the voice of everyone. Chapter 2158. Under the arrangement of Mugging and Xiashi, the police officers belonging to Fairy Tail were assigned to various corners and departments in the Tokyo area to carry out missions. The police officers belonging to Fairy Tail were no strangers to the police and soldier missions. This was because when Fairyland was first established, the order and laws of the entire Fairyland were maintained by the police officers of Fairy Tail. It was not until later that Fairyland began to accept missions from all over the world and needed manpower that Mugging began to create a specialized police force. In addition, there were missions from all over the world. The higher the level of the police under Fairy Tail, the more missions they would have to go through, and the more experience they would have. There was no need for any adaptation time, and the police were all perfectly immersed in the missions. In view of this, the residents of the Tokyo area were somewhat surprised to find that the number of police officers they saw every day had increased. After all, ever since Fairy Tale wantonly transferred the cursed children from other places into Fairyland, the number of police officers from all over the world had plummeted. It was not until a year ago that it was discovered, which alarmed the higher-ups of all countries. However, it was too late to control the loss of the cursed children at this time. Therefore, the number of police officers from all over the world had dropped a lot, especially in the Tokyo area. After all, the Tokyo area was the closest to Fairyland, and was also an ally of Fairyland. Not only did they not control the loss of the cursed children, but they also took the initiative to send the cursed children to Fairyland. Therefore, as early as 1 or 2 years ago, there were not many police officers in the Tokyo area. Only when the Holy Sun issued a commission to Fairyland would Fairyland send police officers to the Tokyo area to carry out missions. Today, a total of nearly 2,000 police officers, and nearly 1,000 police officers pairs poured into the Tokyo area to participate in the work of the Metropolitan Police Department and the self-defense forces in the Tokyo area. Naturally, many people were surprised to find that the number of police officers had increased. However, the first thing that the police officers belonging to Fairy Tale requested to accept was patrol work. As a result, there were traces of police officers everywhere on the streets, which frequently attracted the attention of the residents of the Tokyo area. As for why the first thing that the police officers of Fairy Tale requested to accept was patrol work, the reason was simple. It was to carry out the second task that Noah had given him, to find traces of the Wuxia Association. Therefore, a large number of police officers patrolled the various areas of the Tokyo area almost every day, using their long-term work experience to search for traces of the target. Even the outer Zhou district was not spared. Of course, there was no need to patrol the outer perimeter. However, a portion of the police who had entered the self-defense forces work system, known as Fairy Tale, would often wander around the periphery looking for traces of Wuxia Association. In other words, the blanket search that Noah had mentioned was being carried out perfectly by the police officers of Fairy Tale. During this process, an unexpected piece of news was spread. I heard that the president of the Osaka region, Chiwu, was assassinated in a room of an international hotel. Really? Of course it's true. The ruler of Osaka actually died in Tokyo? This time, Tokyo is in big trouble. A foreign ruler died in Tokyo. This matter caused an uproar in the entire Tokyo area for a while. For this reason, the rulers of the Osaka region were furious, and they all questioned the Tokyo area, asking for justice. This was not a joke. It was possible for the two countries to enter a state of war if things didn't go well. However, in this regard, the emperor not only did not express his condolences with a peace-loving attitude like before, but he also announced a piece of news. The president of the Osaka region, Chiwu, harbored evil intentions against Fairyland, which carries the hope of all mankind, and attempted to murder the president of Fairyland. He has now been personally executed by the president of Fairyland, President Noah. If the Osaka region has any objections to this matter, you can report it to Fairyland. In one sentence, the entire upper echelons of the Osaka region completely lost their temper. Report? How to report? Now, the people of the world had placed their hopes on Fairyland and stood behind Fairyland. In the hope of being saved, which country's people would advocate condemning Fairyland? Not to mention, Chiwu Shangshuan was originally a dictator, and imposed heavy taxes in the Osaka region, which had already caused the anger of all the people in the Osaka region. In addition, the upper echelons of the Osaka region were actually coveting the position of the ruler of the Osaka region. Questioning Tokyo was just a superficial attitude. Now that Tokyo gave an explanation, and it was such an irrefutable explanation, the upper echelons of the Osaka region were of course happy to accept it, and began to compete for the position of the ruler. Unfortunately, since Chiwu Shangshuan had been the ruler of the Osaka region for so many years, and he himself was the top cadre of the Wuxia Association, how could he not have arranged for the Wuxia Association people to lurk in the Osaka region? Not to mention lurking, most of the senior officials in the Osaka region were replaced by the cadre of the Wuxia Association, arranged by Chiwu Shangshuan over the years, almost making the Wuxia Association the ruler of the entire Osaka region. Under such circumstances, the Osaka region was completely chaotic. The upper echelons who did not know the existence of the Wuxia Association wanted to compete for the position of the ruler. The upper echelons of the Wuxiang Association also wanted to compete for the position of the ruler. Coupled with some neutral parties who sincerely wanted to let the people of the Osaka region live a happy life, the upper echelons of the Osaka region were suddenly divided into 3 factions, fighting with each other. After learning about this matter, Noah directly gave another order to Mugging and Xiashi. Send another police force to the Osaka area. Nominally, it's the same as the Tokyo area, but it's also to maintain order. Then secretly investigate the entire Osaka area's high officials, and dig out all the 5 Xiang Association people. This order made Mugging and Xiashi stunned for a while, and at the same time they also looked at each other. It's over. Noah is really serious. It seems that the president's tolerance of the Wuxiang Association has reached the limit. It really has reached the limit. Before, when Mugging was attacked, Noah did not know the existence of the Wuxiang Association, and did not know that they had already targeted the Fairy Tale Guild. Therefore, Noah let Li Qingyin and bodyguard Zhua escape. But now, knowing everything that the Wuxiang Association did, and that even Qiwu Zhongshuan was one of the top operatives of the Wuxiang Association, Noah really did not intend to let the Wuxiang Association go. Therefore, Noah made a prompt decision to be serious, and let the entire fairy tale take action. The top operatives of the Wuxiang Association are stirring up trouble in the Tokyo and Osaka regions, and the upper echelons of the other 3 regions may have also been infiltrated by the Wuxiang Association. Let the police in the guild take action, except for half of them stationed in Fairyland. The rest are sent to the 5 major regions of Japan, and completely uproot the Wuxiang Association. This was Noah's order. Half of the people were stationed in Fairyland, and the rest were sent to various countries in the 5 major regions of Japan to give a fatal blow to the Wuxiang Association. If it was before the release of the artificial artifacts sending so many people, it was really hard to say whether they could complete the mission and protect their hometown at the same time. But now, with the release of the artificial artifact, the initiators of the top 1000 IP in the fairy tale have all become absolute powerhouses who have reached the domain, so they naturally have more power to spare. Not to mention, in Fairy Tale, there were also many leader-type characters. Therefore, Noah can rest assured that the Wuxiang Association in the other regions will be annihilated by the capable members of the guild. With such a big operation going on, a month's time passed in the blink of an eye. A piece of news was finally reported to Noah. Found the Wuxiang Association base. Chapter 2159. Tokyo area. Outer peripheral area. Giant stone monument. The pitch-black giant wall soared straight into the clouds. Under the huge black wall, there was a number marked in stainless steel. Number 0013. This was the Tokyo area's number 13 giant stone monument. Outside the giant stone monument was the active unexplored territory of Protozoa. Inside the giant stone monument, there were endless ruins that humans didn't want to stay in. In the ruins, collapsed buildings and houses with their roofs crushed could be seen everywhere. Toppled telephone poles wrapped around wires, drawing a complicated pattern like a flower rope. The ground was piled up with aluminum cans and all kinds of plastic garbage. After the garbage was fermented, the ground under the garbage emitted some heat. Wood, mortar and rusty nails were scattered all over the ground, making it difficult to see the original ground. And in such a garbage dump, there was a manhole cover like the cover of an underground sewer. Looking carefully, next to the manhole cover, there was a symbol that absolutely couldn't be seen if one didn't look carefully. It was a symbol. Above this symbol there was a feather. Impressively, it was a 5-pointed star decorated with feathers. If this manhole cover was opened, it would be found that under the manhole cover was a tunnel similar to a sewer. And at the end of the tunnel there was a base. A base that extended from the outer peripheral area of Tokyo to the unexplored territory outside the giant stone monument. Inside, there were people doing research and work. Obviously, this was a research institute. Although there were clearly some fully armed combatants, there were also quite a few researchers. They wore white lab coats and walked around the underground research institute, busying themselves non-stop. If this scene was on the ground, it would definitely have a completely different smell of technology. But here, this scene only gave people the feeling of shuddering. Because in this research institute, there were no sophisticated instruments, no fantasy-like technology, only bulging bags. The bags were surrounded by blood vessels, densely hanging down from the dome ceiling, almost filling the entire space. Each bag was enough to hold a person. But at this moment it wasn't a person inside, but a monster soaked in water. There were fish with multiple heads. There were beetles full of lumps. There were also huge ribbon-like creatures that could not be distinguished from nematodes or snakes. There were even xenomorphs that had spikes all over their bodies like hedgehogs, but no one knew what kind of animals they were. Needless to say, these were all primitive animals. The bags hanging from the ceiling looked like culture tanks that were used to cultivate all kinds of primitive animals. Just like that, a group of researchers recorded in front of the bags. From time to time, they would use test tubes to inject some liquids into the bags, and even throw in some pills for the protozoa to consume. The fully armed combatants were patrolling the surroundings or watching over the entire experiment process. They were all armed with guns. Without a doubt, they were a group of terrorists. However, in this group of terrorists, a portion of them clearly had a different aura. Li Qingyin and Menishwaran were among these people. Clearly, these combat personnel, who had completely different auras from ordinary terrorists, were all mechanical soldiers. They belonged to the mysterious organization Five Xiang Association, and were modified by Grunewald, who even one of the four wise men, Murotojin, claimed to be the world's strongest brain. They were more powerful than ordinary mechanical soldiers. At this time, these mechanical soldiers were surrounding a person covered in a black robe. Each of them had an angry look on their faces as they loudly expressed to the top operatives, "Your Excellency, we can't be passive like this anymore. Go out and fight with them. When has our Five Xiang Association been forced to this point by others? How dare they do this? We have to make them pay the price." Each of the mechanical soldiers was unimaginably angry. That was to be expected. Although they had been staying in the underground research institute all this time, it was impossible for the people here not to know about the news outside. Now, all the mechanical soldiers already knew that the entire Tokyo area was filled with the figures of the fairy tale police. Moreover, the other party had been searching for the whereabouts of them all this time, trying to kill them all. If it was just like this, then forget it. Who would have thought that the Holy Son of Heaven would actually be so ruthless, ordering the Sima clan to thoroughly investigate all of the high-ranking officials in the Tokyo area. Surprisingly, all of the spies of the Five Xiang Association were dug out, causing the Five Xiang Association to suffer heavy losses. During this time, many members of the Five Xiang Association, who were forced to expose their identities, had conflicts with the fairy tale police. In the end, no one was spared and they were all suppressed. The basic personnel of 1 wing and 2 wings were all arrested and imprisoned. The high-level personnel of 3 wings and 4 wings were executed on the spot. Even one of the top operatives from the Osaka area, Qi Wuzhongshuan, was executed on the spot by Noah. If this loss was not heavy, then what was? Not to mention, Noah's target was not only the Tokyo area. According to the news in the past month, Your Excellency and the others already knew that Noah sent a large number of police to investigate the 5 major areas of the Japanese archipelago for various reasons. The purpose was to uproot the Five Xiang Association. And it was not that there were no results. Just like the Tokyo region in the other 4 regions, there were a large number of cadres of the Wuxiang Association, who were found by the police of Fairy Tale from the high officials of the various regions. They were completely finished. Now, except for Qi Wuzhongshuan, the rest of the top operatives were all like rats on the street. They were forced to hide by the Fairy Tale police. It should be known that there were a total of 5 top operatives in the Five Xiang Association. Now, except for one of the top operatives who was like Qi Wuzhongshuan, who won the position of the ruler of a region, the rest of the top operatives were all forced to hide in secret bases. Your Excellency was the same. After hearing this news, the mechanical soldiers that had been suppressed for a month finally couldn't help but explode. We are noble people whose goal is world hegemony. When did we fall to this point? In the past few years, we have already infiltrated the top management of the 5 major areas of the Japanese archipelago. We were only one step away from winning the position of the ruler of the 5 areas, unifying the Japanese archipelago, and then going abroad to rule the world. Now all of our efforts have been destroyed. Damn it. Damn the Fairy Tale. A mere civilian organization dares to do this. Your Excellency, let's use all of our strength and fight them. Your Excellency. Saito Yoshihito was the most resentful one among the mechanical soldiers, and he kept growling. Right now, the only way for us to survive is to kill Noa Doria. We have to kill him. Yes. Kill Noa Doria. Kill that damned cursed child shelter. It's all because of him that we fell to this point. Hearing the mechanical soldiers led by Saito Yoshihito shouting angrily, on the side, Li Qingyin, who was holding a kodachi in a daze, lowered his head and couldn't help but laugh in his heart. In the end, if the Wuxiang Association didn't target the fairy tale, then they wouldn't have fallen to this point, right? Only you are allowed to deal with others, but others are not allowed to fight back. All of you are stupid people who rely on your identity as mechanical soldiers to think that you are superior to others. Li Qingyin wasn't the only one who thought so. Your Excellency also thought so. Fight? Your Excellency said in an extremely cold voice. Then tell me, how do you plan to fight? Your Excellency's cold voice made everyone quiet down. Can you destroy one of the 3 demon realms? Your Excellency said sarcastically. No way, right? But they can? Then how do you fight? Do you want to die? Everyone was speechless, including Saito Yoshihito. All the mechanical soldiers felt aggrieved. Chapter 2160. How could they not feel aggrieved? As the work of Professor Grunewald, who was known as the strongest brain among the 4 wise men, the mechanical soldiers here all thought that they were better than the other 3 strongest brain mechanical soldiers. This was not because they thought highly of themselves, but because it was the truth. Didn't Muroto-jin also say that even she could not understand a part of Grunewald's mechanical soldier modification blueprint? Moreover, Muroto-jin even admitted that if she were in Grunewald's shoes, she would not have the confidence to revive Grunewald with just a piece of brain fragment and modify his entire body into a machine. The degree of mechanization was extremely close to 100%. This was no longer in the category of modification but in the category of creation. Muroto-jin's current technology was only at the level of modifying a part of a human into a machine. The other 2 people in charge of the mechanization project were also at the same level. They could not mechanize a person to 100%, not even 50%. This showed how terrifying Grunewald's technology was. The mechanical soldiers modified by such a person were naturally much stronger than the mechanical soldiers modified by the other people in charge. Of course, this was only in terms of performance. Combat skills and so on still depended on the person. For example, the mechanical properties of a bodyguard's body were close to 100%, so the strength he could unleash was incredibly high. However, in the previous battle with Tina, even if he was forced into a corner, he would only use his body to resist, and his attacks would only be punching 1 punch at a time. He was completely reliant on his performance in battle. Compared to those true masters, his combat skills were so weak that it was unbearable. If the Menace Protector's combat skills were a little higher, he wouldn't ask to be like Mujenko, but only to be like Rintaro, who grasped a systematic school of combat techniques. Then his combat strength would soar straight up, surpassing even Li Qingyin. Unfortunately, Grunewald did not realize this at all. He was only immersed in his hatred of Noah and did not think about training himself. He even thought about killing Noah with his own hands all day long. How stupid! However, Grunewald's strength was still terrifying. At the very least, he was comparable to the initiators in the top 100 IP rankings. Note that this refers to the initiator, not the facilitator. Initiators who could borrow the protozoan virus in their bodies to easily obtain power surpassing that of humans were existences in the top 100 IP rankings. If they were to fight a facilitator one-on-one, only the facilitators in the top 10 IP rankings would dare to say that they had a chance of winning. Therefore, in terms of the promoter's ability, the threat protector was enough to rank in the top 20 of the IP rankings. How could he not think that he was better than the rest of the mechanical soldiers if he could reach such a level despite having such terrible combat skills? However, these mechanical soldiers, who had always thought that they were extremely outstanding, were now forced by Noah to hide in this underground research institute that did not see the light of day. They were like street rats. How could they not feel aggrieved? In fact, you are also sullen. Undoubtedly, our Wuxiang Association was so close to completely infiltrating the 5 major regions of the Japanese archipelago. Some of our top operatives had already become regional rulers, and some were like me already moving towards the position of ruler. In the end, His Excellency was filled with hatred. In the end, Noah Dole's one operation had beaten us all back to square one, and even faced the threat of annihilation. In your heart, you had already taken the threat of Fairyland seriously. However, you never thought that Fairyland could completely eradicate the Wuxia Association. Firstly, it was because Fairyland was in the light while they were in the dark. It would not be that easy to completely find them. Secondly, it was because Fairyland had a lot of scruples. They had to face the difficulties of countries around the world while protecting the people of their forces. They had too many weaknesses, and could not spare enough manpower to deal with the Wuxia Association. However, the release of an artificial divine relic completely changed everything. Now, Fairyland still had to take care of the people in their territory. However, with the help of the artificial divine relic and the addition of almost 1,000 initiators who had reached domain, even if they were to send out more than half of their forces, the rest would be enough to defend Fairyland. Now Fairyland had won the hearts of the people all over the world, and made the countries around the world wary of attacking them. They could no longer brazenly make things difficult for them, and could even invest more manpower to do what they wanted. Moreover, Noah had made the countries around the world go for wool but come home shorn, and started to take in the cursed children of the world into Fairyland. Not only did Fairyland's manpower not decrease, but it increased instead, with more and more forces to spare. At this time, the Wuxia Association that had deliberately targeted Fairyland naturally met with a tragedy. If it was not for the advantage of hiding in the dark, the Wuxia Association would have been wiped out long ago. According to Noah Dole's words, he seems to have noticed my true identity. His Excellency was very irritated. If I continue to stay in the Tokyo area, I will eventually follow in Chi-Wu's footsteps. That is why I had planned to abandon everything in the Tokyo area, and temporarily retreat from the area, and find a chance to come back and replace the Sage Son of Heaven. But now this escape route was also sealed. Tokyo, Osaka, Sendai, Sapporo, and Bodo, the 5 major regions of Japan, are all being watched by the police of Fairy Tail. Even if I can escape from the Tokyo area, once I enter the other 4 regions, I will be immediately discovered and completely finished. The more he thought about it, the more irritated he became. But if I don't escape and continue to stay in the Tokyo area, it will definitely be a dead end. In other words, His Excellency only had 2 paths left. 1, flee abroad. 2, flee to unexplored territory. Even if Fairy Tail had more manpower, they would not be able to turn over all the unexplored territories of countries and even gastronomic animals in the world, right? However, these 2 paths could also force His Excellency into a dead end. If he were to flee abroad, he would have to take a plane. However, Fairyland has an intact artificial satellite, and it is entirely possible to monitor the plane His Excellency took and stop him. If he were to flee to unexplored territory, he would have to face the endless gastronomic animals. In the end, whether he could survive or not was an unknown. Dead end. Dead end. It's all dead end. The irritation in His Excellency's heart finally turned into anxiety. I'm afraid that the other top operatives are also facing the same danger as me. Is there really no other way? The Excellency could not help but growl. Could it be that our glorious 5 Feathers Association is really going to be completely finished because of a man? I can't accept this. The Excellency's growl became louder and louder. I can't accept this. However, so what if he could not accept this? When he attacked Fairy Tail, His Excellency should have been mentally prepared. He should have been mentally prepared to be completely annihilated by Fairy Tail. Your Excellency! The mechanical soldiers were all silent, as if they were in the same boat. Is this the end? Li Qingyin pressed on his hat and muttered softly. Why? The bodyguard Zhuoren was lost in his soaring jealousy. Why is the world so biased towards Noah Doria? Yes, the world was biased towards Noah. There was no doubt about this. However, it was all because of Noah's hard work that he had achieved his current status. Even after leaving for 3 years, if it was not for Noah's original plan, Fairyland would not have appeared. All of this was what Noah deserved. The bodyguard Zhuoran, who only wanted to win the beauty and use the Holy Sun to climb up the ranks, would definitely not understand. Suddenly, Binay the leech, who was holding the kodachi and had his head down, suddenly raised his head and shouted loudly, "Dad! It's coming!" Hearing this, everyone, including Li Qingyin, was stunned. Kaboom! At this moment, the entire Underground Research Institute suddenly shook violently. The Excellency Li Qingyin, the bodyguards were ran, and the mechanical soldiers who were immersed in their resentment and jealousy were directly caught off guard. They were shaken by the violent shaking and stood up in panic. What happened? Earthquake! Earthquake! No. Li Qingyin suddenly stood up straight. That's the aftermath of the explosion. That one sentence caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble. Chapter 2161. Another explosion sounded, causing the entire Underground Research Institute to tremble. It was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. It was extremely thrilling. What's going on? Is there a collapse? Why is this happening? In the Underground Research Institute that was shaking violently as if an earthquake had occurred, the researchers in white coats were all panicking. They all let out sorrowful cries and screams. Their faces were full of fear, but they still swayed under the violent shaking and fell to the ground. Not only the researchers but even the fully armed terrorists were in a panic. Under the tremors, they panicked and even turned into rolling gourds, rolling all over the place. The entire Underground Research Institute was in chaos. Only the mechanical soldiers could barely maintain their bodies and not fall to the ground. As for Sir, he had no combat ability at all. If it weren't for the protection of the mechanical soldiers, he would have fallen to the ground in a sorry state. However, at this moment Sir and the others could no longer care about their sorry state. Because compared to their sorry state, their hearts were shaken even more. Someone is blowing up the tunnel in front of the Research Institute. It must be like this. Attack! Attack! The mechanical soldiers were both shocked and angry. Naturally, they were shocked by this sudden change. But they were angry about the current situation. Someone is actually attacking? The mechanical soldiers, who were already feeling aggrieved because they were hiding in the Underground Research Institute, were angered by the fact that they were attacked. Only two people were equally surprised, but they were not angry. Instead, they felt that the temperature of their bodies was decreasing. Of these two people, one was Sir, and the other was Li Qingyin. This was because both of them immediately knew who had attacked the base. At a certain moment, the sound of the explosion suddenly disappeared. Rumble. The entire Underground Research Institute, which was shaking violently like an earthquake, gradually recovered. It stopped. Didn't the collapse affect this place? That's great. One by one, the researchers and terrorists got up from the ground, their faces full of lingering fear. Only the mechanical soldiers noticed that something was wrong. Of course, Sir also didn't think that it was over. Looking at the door in front of the Underground Research Institute, Sir slowly clenched his fists and said bitterly and hoarsely, "Is it here?" As soon as he finished speaking, bang! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the door of the Underground Research Institute exploded, setting off a huge wave of flames and shockwaves. The flames and shockwaves turned into surging waves of fire. Together with the fragments of the door, they surged into the Underground Research Institute like an explosion of flames. The strong impact directly affected the entire research institute, shaking the entire place. All the researchers and terrorists felt their ears ring from the powerful explosion. Their minds went blank, as if they had been attacked by an invisible force. All of them saw stars and fell down with miserable cries. However, your group had long been prepared. Adding on the fact that your strength was tyrannical, they protected you behind them and hurriedly retreated. Fortunately, the explosion didn't last long. Not long after, the intense commotion subsided. However, the entire Underground Research Institute was in a mess. Charred pieces of the door were scattered everywhere, and the air was filled with thick smoke. Cough, cough, cough. The researchers and terrorists started coughing one after another. However, all the mechanical soldiers opened their eyes wide and looked in the direction of the door in disbelief. Following a flurry of footsteps, adults and children with guns in their hands poured into the Underground Research Institute from outside the door. They lined up neatly on both sides and aimed their guns in front of them. What? Min. Police. Attackers. How could this be? Only then did the researchers come to their senses, but they were all panicking. The terrorists were also shocked. They almost reflexively raised the guns in their hands and pointed them at the policemen who were rushing in. Your Excellency! Your Excellency! All the mechanical soldiers immediately pulled out the guns they carried and pointed them in front of them, protecting Your Excellency behind them. Even the bodyguards pulled out their guns in panic and pointed them in front of them, as if they were caught off guard. Only Li Ching-yin and Li Binei Jr. stood calmly in place. Dad! Li Binei Jr. pulled out a pair of kodachi. His eyes turned scarlet, and his face was full of murderous intent. No, it's not time to make a move yet. Li Ching-yin stood there casually, but his eyes were fixed in front of him. The whole place suddenly fell silent. On one side, there were obviously well-trained police troops. On the other side, there was an underground organization mixed with mechanical soldiers, terrorists, and researchers. Both sides occupied the front and back of the Underground Research Institute. They used the guns in their hands as deterrents, forming a standoff. However, the behavior of the two sides was completely different. The former looked cold and ruthless. The latter, on the other hand, were surprised, panicked, angry, and terrified. It was as if they had all sorts of emotions. It was clear at a glance who was the attacker and who was the victim. His Excellency, who was protected by a group of mechanical soldiers, raised his eyes and looked at the police troops who occupied the door. He clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "You're still not going to come out?" As soon as he said this, a voice immediately responded, "I'm just thinking whether I should capture you alive, or give you a more dignified death." As he said this, a figure slowly walked in from the door under the protection of his companions. Looking at the person, the super metal face of the bodyguard twisted like muscles. His eyes were full of hatred as he said the name of the person. Noah Doria. Who else could it be other than Noah? Of course, Noah wasn't the only person who came in. Beside Noah, Hina, Mugging Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and Rentaro all walked in with Noah. Hina. Li Binei Jr.'s eyes widened. His scarlet eyes were full of murderous intent. Binei Leach Jr. Tina met Binei Leach Jr.'s murderous gaze, and her delicate doll-like features became extremely cold and detached in the instant that she entered battle mode. As for the others, they immediately looked at the black-robed His Excellency. Is that the top operative of the Wuxia Association? Xiaoshi's face was full of wisdom. He really knows how to hide. He actually hid in a place like this, Yanzhu complained. Top operative. Mugging looked at His Excellency and tightened his grip on his sword. His Excellency. Rentaro had a complicated expression. He wanted to ask something but gave up because he thought of something. His Excellency naturally noticed Mugging and Rentaro's gazes. However, he only glanced at them before turning to Noah. Meeting His Excellency's gaze, Noah smirked. We finally meet, Your Excellency. After saying that, Noah narrowed his eyes and said, Don't worry. No, I should say we meet again, right? Again. Everyone present was stunned. Again? In other words, Noah and Your Excellency have already met? But if that's the case, why would Noah let Your Excellency go? Everyone was confused. Only Rentaro knew why Noah said this. He lowered his head and remained silent. His Excellency was also silent. After a while he suddenly spoke. Actually, 3 years ago, when you just created Fairy Tale, the top operatives of our Wuxiang Association gathered once to discuss the existence of Fairy Tale. Oh? Is that so? Noah replied nonchalantly. Then what was the result of the discussion? We believe that the guild you created has a lot of potential. If it can successfully survive the resistance of others, it will become the largest police organization in Tokyo. His Excellency said. For this reason, Chiwu Zhongshuan even thought that he could absorb you and make your guild our pawn and do things for us. That sounds like something he would say. Noah shrugged. Perhaps from that moment on, one thing was destined. Either you die or I die. Chapter 2162. Noah's casual words finally caused His Excellency's expression to become completely distorted. As expected, we shouldn't have allowed Fairy Tale to survive in the first place. His Excellency bellowed. At that time, we should have taken action against you. Unfortunately, if you didn't take action at that time, you were destined to fail. Noah said sarcastically. Of course, even if you took action at that time, you were destined to fail as well. After saying that, Noah raised his hand directly. Kacha kacha kacha. Accompanied by the sound of countless mechanical movements, The facilitators belonging to Fairy Tale all raised the guns in their hands and pointed the muzzles forward. Wait! Don't kill us! I surrender! Surrender! The researchers in white coats screamed one by one. However, Noah, who did not like to kill the innocent, ordered indifferently. Kill! This word was like a fuse that completely detonated the smoke in the air. Bang 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 bang. In the next moment, the facilitators belonging to Fairy Tale pulled the triggers of the guns in their hands without any hesitation, causing the muzzles to flicker wildly. Instantly, countless bullets rained down like a torrential downpour. Amidst the sounds of bodies being torn apart, the bullets sank into the bodies of the researchers wearing white coats one after another. Ugh! Ah! Woo! One by one, the researchers in white coats let out a mournful cry before they died and fell one by one. In just a short while, most of the researchers in white coats fell to the ground, dead as could be. No! Don't kill us! Surrender! Surrender! The remaining researchers all let out desperate cries, but then they were shot one after another. They fell one after another, dyeing the ground a scarlet color. Looking at this scene, Noah's expression didn't change at all from the beginning to the end. Even Hina, Yanju, Xiashi, and all the cursed children present did not have any change in expression, indifferently looking at the researchers walking toward their deaths. Even Rentaro had been shooting the researchers one by one, ignoring the terrorists. Logically speaking, a group of enemies without any combat ability and had already surrendered, even if they were criminals, should be arrested instead of shot directly. Even if it was Noah's order, the righteous Rentaro should not be so cruel as to kill a group of people without any ability to resist. However, whether it was Noah who cherished his life or the righteous Rentaro at this time, neither showed mercy, not even the slightest bit of emotion. The reason was very simple, it was because of the gastronomic animals in the bags around them. The police belonging to Fairy Tale had already learned from Noah that the 5 Xiong Association's people were cultivating gastronomic animals in an attempt to control them to eliminate rebellious countries. This move was simply insane. Those were gastronomic animals after all. Not to mention whether or not they could be controlled once they were released, it was very likely that the gastronomic animal virus would spread in a country or region, causing a disaster. Therefore, humans regarded gastronomic animals as targets that must be eliminated. If they did not completely eliminate the gastronomic animals, even if only one was left, in the end it could threaten the entire human race. The gastronomic animal virus was terrifying. Once they were infected, their numbers would immediately increase and they would spread like a plague. Therefore, even if there was only one stage I gastronomic animal, it could eventually lead to the extinction of the human race. Under such circumstances, the researchers here actually did not care about the life and death of the human race. Not only did they not destroy the protozoa, they even cultivated them. This sin was more serious than any of the murderers in the Wuxia Association, who were stained with blood. To be able to become a member of Fairy Tale, the people here were not people who did not know the severity of the matter. In addition, Fairy Tale had long been the foundation of Fairyland. In the past, they were also responsible for enforcing the laws and regulations in Fairyland, so they would not show any favoritism toward crimes. In view of this, even if the researchers had no combat ability and voluntarily surrendered, the facilitators on the scene would still mercilessly execute them. Thus, one by one, the researchers became the first batch of victims and all of them fell. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but it was only a matter of seconds. As the researchers fell one by one, the mechanical soldiers and the terrorists finally reacted one after another. What are you still standing there for? Zhuowei roared. Shoot! Frankly speaking, no matter how they took turns, it was not Zhuowei's turn to give the order. However, in the current situation, no one could care so much. Bang 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 bang. At that moment, the terrorists all raised the guns in their hands, roaring as they fired continuously. Your Excellency! Your Excellency! We must retreat. Retreat quickly. The current situation is not good for us. The mechanical soldiers continued to surround His Excellency, firing at the front while shouting at His Excellency. What do you think? Li Qingyin stood leisurely beside His Excellency, twirling the gun in his hand as he laughed softly. Retreat? Or do you want to die? Retreat! His Excellency also pulled out his gun, firing as he gave the order. Retreat through the emergency exit. Quick! A group of mechanical soldiers immediately covered His Excellency, retreating continuously to the back. After opening an automatic door, all of them rushed in and fled without a trace. Even Zhuoran, the bodyguard, glared in Noah's direction. Then he turned around and fled without a trace. Previously, they had been clamoring to fight it out with the fairy tale police officers, but now each one of them was running away faster than the other. Daddy! Binet Leach had been staring at Tina, the kodachi in her hand trembling uncontrollably, her lips trembling as if she was trying to hold back something. No! Of course, Li Qingyi knew what his baby daughter was thinking, and rejected without hesitation. Binet Leach's face was filled with unwillingness, but she did not disobey Li Qingyi's order. She glared at Tina, then turned her head. Immediately, Li Qingyi and Binet Leach also fled into the emergency exit, disappearing in a short while. After the group of mechanical soldiers retreated into the emergency exit, the automatic door suddenly closed. What? Wait! There's still us! Your Excellency! Your Excellency! The group of terrorists who were confronting Fairy Tale's police suddenly panicked. Unfortunately, the current situation was very clear. A group of the lowest-level personnel with only one wing had already been abandoned by His Excellency, just to buy some time. Regarding this, the police under the command of Fairy Tale showed no mercy. They crazily unleashed their firepower, shooting down one terrorist after another. Damn it! Damn police officers! Damn it! One by one, the terrorists madly shot. However, the initiators of Fairy Tale all held up their heavy anti-terrorist shields, blocking all the incoming bullets. The surface of the shields was constantly hit by the bullets, causing sparks to fly from the friction. On the other hand, the facilitators of Fairy Tale were all hiding behind their partner initiators, as they accurately shot down the terrorists who couldn't find cover. For this attack, Noah was fully prepared. On the other hand, the people of Wuxia Association were passively facing the attack, so naturally, they were not prepared. Thus, the group of terrorists was finally brought to justice, and all of them were shot to death. Bang! In front of the emergency exit, Noah kicked open the sturdy automatic door, looked at the long tunnel in front of him, and a cold smile without any smile appeared on his face. Let's see where you can escape to. Under Noah's lead, a group of Fairy Tale police officers rushed into the tunnel and began to chase after the remaining members of the Wuxia Association, who had retreated back to their original location. The show had just begun. Chapter 2163. Quick! Quick! Those useless winged fools can't hold off Fairy Tale for too long. We have to be quick! Quick! In the dim passageway, a group of mechanical soldiers escorted His Excellency as they ran forward, desperately running for their lives. Li Qingyi and Leech Binet were behind everyone, in charge of bringing up the rear. The passage was very long. Even after running for a while, they still couldn't see the end. Under such circumstances, when they thought of the Fairy Tale chasing after them, the mechanical soldiers were extremely anxious and couldn't wait to escape as quickly as possible. In fact, their current speed was still far from the limit of the mechanical soldiers. Although they were of different types as a modified existence, these mechanical soldiers still had outstanding physical strength compared to ordinary people. If it wasn't because they needed to take care of His Excellency, the mechanical soldiers would definitely be able to retreat faster, right? Thinking of this, Zhuomeng had the urge to abandon His Excellency. However, although Zhuomeng was stupid, he didn't know how to spell the word death. Now, under the situation of being targeted by the Fairy Tale, Zhuomeng would never be able to live openly under the sun. If he abandoned His Excellency at this time, it would be equivalent to depriving him of the right to live in the shadows. For the Wuxia Association, even if they failed a mission, they would be executed, not to mention betrayal. Although the Wuxia Association couldn't even protect themselves now, it was better than Zhuomeng being alone. Considering this, although Zhuomeng had the urge to abandon His Excellency, he suppressed it. Of course, Zhuomeng wasn't a patient person. Looking at the endless passage in front of him, Zhuomeng couldn't help but anxiously shout at His Excellency. His Excellency! How long until we reach the exit? It's still early. His Excellency could still maintain his calm. In order to prevent the primitive animals in the Research Institute from suddenly escaping, or to prevent them from accidentally being infected and becoming primitive animals, this base was built very large, so the exit naturally wouldn't be set too close. Hearing this, Zhuo Meng almost cursed it out loud. Why did they build the base so large for no reason? So what if the primitive gut animals ran out? How many people could die? Zhuo Ren, who hadn't considered the possibility of exposing himself, cursed in his heart as he grew more and more anxious. Hurry, hurry, hurry. You have to be quick. Zhuo Wei roared in his heart. I can't let that guy catch me again. Recalling the scene of being executed by Noah in front of all the people in Tokyo 3 years ago, the bodyguard Zhuo Ren felt hatred and anxiety in his heart. With Zhuo Ren's hatred for Noah, he naturally couldn't accept the fact that he was defeated by Noah again. That hateful Noah Dole, Zhuo Ren said angrily. Isn't it just because they have more people? Damn it. It was not just the bodyguards. A portion of the mechanical soldiers were also cursing angrily because of the anxiety in their hearts. Only a portion of them remained calm, but they kept turning their heads to look behind them. Their footsteps never stopped. Li Qingyin, who was in charge of bringing up the rear, didn't even turn his head. He unhurriedly followed behind everyone, pressing down on his hat and whispering to Leech Benet Jr. Is there any sign of him catching up? No. Leech Benet Jr. had been releasing his ability. His pupils completely turned into a scarlet color as he followed Noah closely while shaking his head. I didn't hear any footsteps, only the sound of the wind. Yes, only the sound of the wind. Moreover, this gust of wind was getting closer and closer. Whoosh! In the sound of the air being torn apart, a figure suddenly blew past like a gust of wind. It swept past His Excellency and the others who were desperately trying to escape, brushed past them and flashed in front of them. Dad! Leech Benet Jr. finally realized that something was wrong and screamed. Stop! Li Qingyin rarely shouted, and his voice was slightly distorted. Oh! His Excellency, Zhuo Ran, and many mechanical soldiers suddenly stopped as if they had slammed on the brakes. Their footsteps rubbed against the ground, raising a cloud of dust as they tried their best to stop. At the same time, on the passage in front, the figure that turned into a gust of wind suddenly flashed and appeared there, blocking everyone's path. What? How is it possible? When did this happen? Looking at the figure blocking in front of the passage, the mechanical soldiers all gasped. His Excellency and Zhuo Ren's breathing became a little rapid, and their expressions were extremely ugly. In front of them, the figure blocking the passage raised his head. A pair of eyes that were like dark stars flickered with a frightening expression in the dim passage, and the corners of his mouth lifted into a faint smile. What? You're not going to continue running? You? His Excellency could not help but take a step back. The mechanical soldiers' hearts tightened, and they hurriedly raised the guns in their hands and aimed at him. Unfortunately, before the mechanical soldiers could pull the trigger, the dark eyes that were as dazzling as stars suddenly became sharp, and his gaze became extremely sharp. Being stared at by that sharp gaze, the mechanical soldiers present felt as if they were imprisoned by an extremely heavy force. Their bodies became extremely stiff, and they could not even bend their fingers on the trigger. Surrender, Noah said indifferently. If you surrender now, for the sake of Mugging and Rentaro, I can at least spare your life. This sentence made His Excellency's hand tremble slightly. However, the mechanical soldiers were enraged. Arrogant. Too arrogant. Who do you think you are? You're just an ordinary human who hasn't even undergone any modifications. Do you really think you can defeat so many of our mechanical soldiers? You actually dared to chase after him alone. How stupid. One by one, the mechanical soldiers began to clamor loudly. It was only then that everyone realized what was going on. Obviously, Noah had abandoned the police force of Fairy Tale and chased after them alone. Understanding this, the mechanical soldiers were relieved, and a cruel expression appeared on their faces. Idiot! Zhuo Ren even sneered, his voice full of hatred and joy. Since you came to die alone, don't blame us. After saying that, Zhuo Ren raised his gun first and pointed it at Noah. The rest of the mechanical soldiers also raised their guns one by one, and the black muzzles were all pointed at Noah. Go to hell! Following Zhuo Ren's roar, the mechanical soldiers finally pulled the triggers one by one. Bang 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 bang. A series of gunshots rang out, Muzzle flames burst out from the muzzles one by one, and bullets that could not be seen by the naked eye were released forward, covering Noah's direction like raindrops. Of course, for ordinary people, these bullets were indeed undetectable. However, for Noah, the speed of the bullets was a bit slow. Not to mention that Noah had superb sensing ability. Any attacks that carried hostility, malice, and killing intent could not be hidden. Even with Noah's current vision and senses that had been eternally strengthened, he could easily capture the trajectory of the bullets. Looking at the rain of bullets that shot violently, Noah even found it difficult to move his body. He could only convert the vast and boundless energy in his body into magic power, and then convert the magic power into crushing magic power, which rose slightly from his body. The moment the bullets that came in contact with the crushing magic power on the surface of Noah's body, they suddenly paused, then shattered like dust and scattered to the ground. Without exception. This is a lie, right? How is this possible? All the mechanical soldiers were stunned. His Excellency was even more shocked. Are you also a mechanical soldier? Such an inconceivable scene was not something a human could achieve. Of course, everyone would think that Noah was a mechanical soldier. Unfortunately, there is no part of my body that is mechanized, not even a piece of skin. Noah curled his lips. The one standing here is just a human monsters. Hearing this, the mechanical soldiers who were shocked were furious. You're courting death. Kill him. Murderous intent spread slightly from the space. Chapter 2164. Noah was strong. Very strong. At the very least, from the information collected by the Wuxia Association, as well as the deeds that everyone in the world knew, Noah's strength was evident. He had once destroyed a stage V zodiacal protozoan in one hit. He had once annihilated an army of thousands of protozoans in an instant. From a human's point of view, this level of achievement was simply appalling. Even from the point of view of the mechanical soldiers, this level of battle record could be considered unbelievable. It should be noted that until now, the existence that could single-handedly annihilate a stage V zodiacal protozoan was the top 3 in the IP ranking. Moreover, they were the initiators who had reached domain. Only Rentaro, who relied on the means left behind by Noah to annihilate a stage V zodiacal protozoan, was able to enter the top 10 in the IP ranking. As for humans, it was simply impossible for them to single-handedly annihilate a stage V protozoan. As for an army of thousands of protozoans, annihilating it in an instant was something that even the most powerful initiators could not do, let alone humans. Therefore, in the eyes of others, Noah's achievement was truly appalling. However, even so, everyone in the world only felt that it was inconceivable and unbelievable, and never once regarded Noah as an omnipotent god. That was because to the outside world, Fairyland had announced more than once that Noah was able to achieve this achievement by relying on a secret weapon. For example, the shattering bullet was the explanation given by Noah. In addition, Rentaro had also used the same bullet to annihilate a stage V zodiacal protozoan, which increased the persuasiveness of this claim. Therefore, in the eyes of others, Noah was able to achieve such a terrifying achievement by relying on that terrifying secret weapon. Then, the announcement of the artificial artifact made everyone believe that compared to his apparent strength, Noah himself was more of a research expert, specializing in all kinds of terrifying secret weapons. In light of this, although humans were shocked by Noah's actions, they did not think that Noah was that terrifying. After all, Noah was just a human. No matter how strong a human was, how strong could he be? At least, in terms of pure strength, even if it was a modified mechanical soldier, it was still far behind the most powerful level of the initiators. There had never been a mechanical soldier that could truly defeat an initiator that had reached the domain level, let alone an ordinary person. Noah's incredible power made his excellency and the others believe that Noah might have been modified into a mechanical soldier. However, they were all mechanical soldiers. One side only had one person, while the other side had more than 10. What was there to be afraid of? This was what the mechanical soldiers were thinking. Only Yu and Li Qingyin did not dare to underestimate Noah from the beginning to the end. His Excellency was worried that Noah would take out another terrifying secret weapon. Perhaps that incredible power just now was Noah using some kind of secret weapon. That might not be the case. As for Li Qingyin, it was purely based on the intuition of a strong person. Undoubtedly, Li Qingyin felt that Noah was standing there like an ordinary person. His expression was relaxed, but there was not a single flaw on his body. It was as if he would immediately be killed if he rushed up. This feeling made Li Qingyin extremely vigilant. He did not dare to underestimate Noah at all. There were also mechanical soldiers that were similar to Li Qingyin. These mechanical soldiers, even in the Five Xiang Association, had top-notch combat abilities. They were on the same level as Li Qingyin, and there were even some that surpassed Li Qingyin. However, after being provoked by Noah, no matter how vigilant they were overcome by their own pride and pride. Since bullets won't work, then let's fight directly. Go. Let's go together. If it was any other time, a group of mechanical soldiers who thought highly of themselves would naturally disdain to join forces and bully a single person. However, the person in front of them was an existence that all mechanical soldiers hated. Moreover, the police from Fairy Tale were chasing after him. They could catch up to him at any moment. Since that was the case, they could not care less anymore. Go. Kill him. One by one, the mechanical soldiers moved instantly. Boom! Some of the mechanical soldiers directly broke through the ground and shot out like bullets, charging in Noah's direction. Some of the mechanical soldiers displayed magical abilities, causing the air to tremble slightly. Some were like Tina, able to control items from a distance, causing daggers, blades, and even tires to shoot out like arrows. Some were like Li Qingyin, able to control other forces. They could either control the wind, merge into the air, become invisible, release scorching flames, or create gravity fields. They attacked Noah dreamily. Suddenly, in front of Noah's vision, there seemed to be endless attacks coming at him. In this regard, Noah only felt that it was rather interesting, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. If that's the case, then I'll play with you. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah stomped on the ground with a force that was pathetically weak compared to his own physical ability, causing the ground to suddenly tremble, and small stones were shaken up. Noah waved his hand and gathered the small stones into his palm. Then he exerted force and threw them out. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Those extremely ordinary-looking pebbles were like many powerful bullets, bringing with them an astonishing force. They brought about sharp sounds of air being torn apart as they shot forward, heading toward the incoming mechanical soldiers and their attacks. The first thing he faced was the barrage of attacks. Boom 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 boom. Under the impact of the small stones that shot out like bullets, the long-distance attacks, whether it was daggers, blades, tires, spiral winds, scorching flames, or gravity fields, all of them exploded in midair like fireworks. Dong 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 dong. The remaining pebbles landed on the close combat mechanical soldiers that were charging toward Noah one after another, triggering a series of muffled sounds that were as heavy as cannon booms. The mechanical soldiers seemed to have been struck by lightning as they were sent flying while spewing out blood. The mechanical soldiers that did not charge out but were attacking from afar were all stunned. Even His Excellency and Li Qingyin, who hadn't made a move, narrowed their eyes in shock. In the end, only one person was not hit by a single pebble, and still managed to rush in front of Noah. Hiya! Zhuo Weirun let out a ferocious roar as he clenched his metal fists tightly. Bang 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 bang. Following a series of loud gunshots, the super metal arm of the bodyguard Zhuo Ren ejected bullet shells one after another. That scene was incredibly similar to when Rentaro activated the power of his prosthetic limb. Obviously, Zhuo Weirun and Rentaro were the same type of mechanical soldiers. However, the degree of mechanization was close to 100%, and the enhancement was extremely powerful. Under such circumstances, nearly half of the bullet shells in the prosthetic limb were shot out in succession. The propelling force all turned into substantial attack power, causing Zhuo Weirun's super metal prosthetic limb to swell and shoot out flame-like jets of light that swept across the space like missiles. Go to hell! Zhuo Weirun did not realize that he was the only one attacking, and he threw a punch fiercely. That punch caused the atmosphere to be completely disrupted, and all the pressure was dispelled. With a shocking whistling sound and a sonic boom, it blasted heavily in Noah's direction. In Grunewald's performance test, this attack had even sent a truck flying, and even destroyed a building with a single blow. It was simply unstoppable. Unfortunately for a real god, this punch was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. In the face of this punch, Noah only raised one hand and faced the super metal fist with his palm. Clang! A dazzling white light flashed in Noah's hand that was extended forward. As soon as Zhuo Wei's fist touched the brilliant white light, it immediately caused the brilliant white light to expand, turning into white lines that spread to the incomparably hard pitch-black arm. Bang! In the next moment, amidst a muffled explosion, the super-thin metal arm that was protecting Zhuo Meng was sliced into cubes of equal size by streams of white lines. It then exploded and turned into fragments. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out from Zhuo Wei's mouth. Chapter 2165. Silence. Dead silence. In the entire vast passageway, the mechanical soldiers were either in a daze, their minds blank, or they were lying on the ground unconscious. Only the agonizing cries of those who were in danger kept ringing out, causing the hearts of the mechanical soldiers to tremble. Your Excellency's heart trembled as well. How is this possible? His Excellency's lips trembled as he whispered. The mechanical soldiers modified by Professor Grunewald, more than 10 of them are all. They were all defeated in one move. The close combat mechanical soldiers were all wiped out. The long-range attacks of the mechanical soldiers were all neutralized. Even Zhuo Yiren's prosthetic limb was easily shattered by Noah, turning into an incomparably intense pain that assaulted Zhuo Yiren's mind, causing him to cry out in agony. How is this possible? His Excellency was shocked. How is this possible? If the mechanical soldiers were so easily defeated, then why did the Five Xiang Association spend so much money to modify Grunewald? Ah! Oblivious to the shock in His Excellency's heart, Bao Weizhuorn hugged his broken arm and screamed miserably. That scream was too mournful. It was as if he had suffered great pain, causing tears to flow out of Zhuo Wei's eyes. Of course, Bao Weizhuor's body was almost 100% mechanized. Except for the head, the rest of the body only looked like a human but not a real human. Therefore, people with outstanding physical health did not need to eat. They only needed to sleep so that their brain could rest. Naturally, there was no humanized modification like the tear ducts. In view of this, Zhuo Ruren couldn't even cry. However, it just so happened that the mechanical body of the bodyguard could transmit pain. Even the pain nerves are connected to the mechanical body. It's probably because Grunewald understands that this way, it won't lose its combat instincts and will be able to unleash greater combat power, Noah said with a frown. However, your screams are still too unpleasant to listen to. It's just a broken arm, at least endure it. With that, Noah waved his hand. Buzz! A burst of invisible magic power transformed into a substantial impact that suddenly appeared and blasted heavily onto Bao Weizhuorn's body. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Bodyguard Zhuoran, who was still screaming, directly flew out as if he was hit by a truck. He turned into a rolling gourd and rolled several times on the ground before finally stopping. He rubbed against the ground and slid all the way to His Excellency. His Excellency suddenly took a step back as if he had been frightened. The other long-range combat-type mechanical soldiers also seemed to be frightened and subconsciously took a step back. However, as soon as these long-range combat-type mechanical soldiers took a step back, an anomaly occurred. Bam 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 bam. Without any warning, the surrounding walls of the tunnel exploded again and again, causing the walls to explode one after another. Crash. Chains that seemed to be condensed from the purest light drilled out of the exploded rock wall one by one. Like extremely agile pythons, they streaked across the space and shot toward Your Excellency's group. The mechanical soldiers didn't even have time to react. The chains of light drilled out of the rock wall and wrapped around their bodies. In a panic, all the mechanical soldiers were tied up. What is this? Chains. Chains of light. That man, did he set up a trap here long ago? How would the mechanical soldiers know? This was not a trap that had been set up long ago. Instead, Noah turned the magic power in his body into divine power, and poured it into the ground through his feet. Then he let the divine power spread to the surrounding rock walls. Using the characteristics of shaping, it turned into chains of light and broke out of the wall, binding the long-range mechanical soldiers. In the eyes of ordinary people who couldn't see or even sense divine power, it was naturally as if Noah had set up a trap long ago and lured everyone here. As a result, other than Your Excellency, the only person who was not bound by the chains of light was Li Qingyin. As for the close combat mechanical soldiers, other than the bodyguard who was still holding his broken arm and groaning, the rest had all fainted. Your Excellency only felt a chill in his heart. He looked at Noah as if he was looking at a monster. Noah glanced at Li Qingyin and smiled playfully. You're the only one left. Aren't you going to make a move? Li Qingyin was silent. After a while, Li Qingyin let out a low laugh. I'm really convinced. Li Qingyin raised his hand and made a gesture of surrender. I didn't expect you to be more terrifying than I imagined. As expected of someone who holds the ownership of the world in the palm of his hand. This Five Xiang association is completely incomparable. I surrender. Hearing Li Qingyin's words, Your Excellency's face turned pale. Surrender? Noah continued to glance at Li Qingyin. His playful smile gradually disappeared as he spoke indifferently. Are you really going to surrender? What else can I do? Li Qingyin raised his hand and shrugged. All I want is war, but the Five Xiang Association can't fight against you at all. Moreover, it's already at the end of the road. It's impossible for me to achieve my goal. Since that's the case, I have no reason to continue working for others. That's naturally for the best. Noah looked deeply at Li Qingyin, then suddenly smiled. However, you're the only one who's surrendering, right? Just as Noah's voice fell, a petite figure suddenly rushed out from his side and rushed towards Noah at an extremely fast speed. You're not allowed to bully my father. Li Qingyin Jr., whose eyes had turned scarlet, rushed to Noah's side as if he had gone mad. The odachi in his hand exploded, causing a large area of blade light to burst forth. In the next moment, a storm of slashes cut through the air and directly covered Noah's direction. At this moment, a faint sound pierced through the air. Behind Your Excellency's group, another petite figure flashed over at an astonishing speed. Without even Li Qingyin noticing, she flashed over Your Excellency's head like a stream of light and flashed to Noah's side. Immediately, a sniper rifle as heavy as a hammer was swung from top to bottom, fiercely swinging towards the storm of slashes. Clang! Following the crisp sound of metal clashing, the heavy sniper rifle and the sharp odachi collided, causing bright sparks to fly. Only then did Li Qingyin Jr. notice. There was one more person in front of him. There was one more person who had caused Li Qingyin Jr. to be unable to sleep at night. Tina! Li Qingyin Jr. called out. You want to hurt Big Brother? Tina's eyes were also scarlet as she looked directly at Li Qingyin Jr., appearing extremely cold. That's impossible. Ah! Binay the leech immediately brandished his odachi like a madman. He didn't even pay attention to Noah as he attacked Tina like a madman. In response, Tina didn't advance but instead retreated, as if she was deliberately luring Li Qingyin Jr. away from Noah's side. Her figure leaped and immediately pulled away from Li Qingyin Jr. Li Qingyin Jr. chased after her without any hesitation. Li Qingyin Jr., who was known to be invincible in close combat, obviously hadn't recovered from the blow of being cleanly defeated by Tina in close combat last time. He had developed an abnormal obsession with Tina. Li Qingyin Jr. Li Qingyin hurriedly shouted. However, just as he shouted this, a chain of light flashed at extreme speed and heavily whipped Li Qingyin's body like a shadow of a whip. Bang! Li Qingyin Jr. didn't know how many muffled sounds were heard, but he was directly sent flying and heavily slammed into a rock wall. His head tilted to the side and there was no more movement. Bang! Another muffled sound was heard. However, this time Noah, who had appeared in front of Li Qingyin Jr., stepped on Li Qingyin Jr.'s chest, causing Li Qingyin Jr. to let out a painful howl. Then, Noah raised his head and looked in front of him. Your Excellency was less than half a meter away from Noah. Everyone suddenly went silent. Looking at Noah, who was looking at him with a mocking expression, Your Excellency only felt that his body temperature was rapidly decreasing, and his whole body was ice cold. Chapter 2166. Ugh ugh. Bodyguard's groan became the only sound in the passageway as his chest was stomped on. Noah and Your Excellency looked at each other from less than half a meter away. One had a calm expression from beginning to end, while the other felt cold all over. In fact, the mood of the two was indeed at two extremes. For Noah, after finding the hiding place of His Excellency and the others, the outcome of this operation had already been decided. and it would be difficult for him to have any suspense. For Your Excellency, the Wuxiang Association, which was originally regarded as a glory, was forced to the point of destruction. This fact was perfectly interpreted by the scene of mechanical soldiers lying on the ground or being firmly bound. Despair had already emerged in Your Excellency's heart. Your Excellency didn't even have the urge to escape. In the current situation, Your Excellency couldn't escape. The exit in front had been blocked by Noah. The police in the rear passage were chasing after him. The mechanical soldiers around him were all defeated. Not a single trump card was left in his hand. The only thing Your Excellency could rely on now was the gun in his hand. However, the gun used for self-defense, even at such a close distance, probably couldn't cause any harm to Noah, right? Therefore, Your Excellency just held the gun, and his hand couldn't help but tremble. Seeing this scene clearly, Noah glanced at Your Excellency's face under the black hood, then reached out his hand and slowly took the gun in Your Excellency's hand. Your Excellency couldn't even squeeze out the strength to resist. The gun in his hand was almost taken by Noah without any resistance. Noah said in a casual tone as he twirled his pistol and twirled it nimbly. "Don't you want to say something? Your Excellency? Your Excellency!" Your Excellency said self-deprecatingly. "Haven't you already guessed my identity? Still calling me Your Excellency? Then, I'll change the way I call you," Noah said faintly. "Even at this point you don't plan to surrender? Zihengxiani." When this name appeared in this space, a heavy atmosphere immediately filled the air. His Excellency lowered his head. After a while he reached out and took off the hood on his head. The face that appeared under the hood was a familiar face. The person who had previously provided Noah with clues about Saiwa Zhongshuan's whereabouts in the coffee shop was Mugging and Rentaro's nominal guardian, the former butler of the Tendo family who had once declared that he wanted to become the next ruler of Tokyo Usheng Senichi. When Zihengxiani stared at Noah. "When did you notice my identity?" "Just as you planned to lure me into the Self-Defense Forces military camp, wanting the entire military camp to be turned into ashes with me." Noah met Ziheng's gaze. "Didn't you tell me on the phone that time?" Outside the Self-Defense Forces barracks, Noah said such a sentence when he was talking to His Excellency after getting rid of Toshiro Akiyama. "There is only one reason why I came out of the holy residence." That's right. That day, there was only one reason why Noah came out of the holy residence, followed Saiwa Zhongshuan's trail, and was lured into the Self-Defense Forces military camp. That was Zihengxiani. Mugging had given the task of monitoring Saiwa Zhongshuan to Zihengxiani. That day, after Zihengxiani spoke with Mugging, he asked Noah to come out and meet him directly. The plan to lure me into the Self-Defense Forces military camp was closely linked. Although it wasn't very clever, it was almost flawless. Such a plan had to start with luring me out and having me follow Saiwa Zhongshuan. Noah said, "If I didn't know who Saiwa Zhongshuan was meeting outside and went to the Central Control and Development Agency to investigate the surveillance footage, then discovered Soma Munhide's existence and changed my target to the Self-Defense Forces military camp, then it wouldn't have succeeded." That's true. Zihengxiani's self-deprecating expression became more and more obvious. In order to lure you to the Self-Defense Forces military camp, it was absolutely necessary to let you notice Soma Munhide's existence. Since that was the case, as long as you thought about who was the reason why you went to look for Soma Munhide, then you could basically determine who wanted you dead. The person who made Noah notice Soma Munhide's existence and go to the Self-Defense Forces military camp was Zihengxiani. Zihengxiani used a photo as an excuse to lure Noah out. Then he asked Noah to investigate the surveillance footage and look for Soma Munhide. This was all part of the plan. I also thought that Saiwa Zhongshuan might be the only one acting. That dictator might know that I sent someone to watch him, so he directed and acted out this scene to make me notice Soma Munhide. Noah said leisurely. However, when I confirmed that Soma Munhide was just being used, I was sure that Saiwa Zhongshuan absolutely couldn't direct and act alone. He must have a helper. If Soma Munhide was really a spy, then Saiwa Zhongshuan might have directed and acted out this scene himself. But Soma Munhide was just being used and he was innocent. In that case, as the commander of the self-defense forces in Tokyo, it was impossible for this high-ranking guy not to understand what it meant to secretly meet with the ruler of Osaka. It meant that others had sufficient reason to suspect that the two had been secretly in contact with each other. If things went wrong, he would be charged with treason. Therefore, even if Saiwa Zhongshuan wanted to secretly meet with Soma Munhide, he couldn't do it. Unless Saiwa Zhongshuan has a helper who is capable enough to have a relationship with Soma Munhide, and ask Soma Munhide to come out. Noah looked at Ziheng Xiani and smiled slightly. This helper, if he runs the pie metal business, don't you think he has enough channels to know Soma Munhide? Soma Munhide was the commander of the self-defense forces. Since it was the self-defense forces, wouldn't it be natural for him to buy enough pie metal weapons to deal with animals? Ziheng Xiani himself said that because of the pie metal business, he had many channels. Therefore, Ziheng Xiani and Soma Munhide were already acquainted. Relying on your business channels, you even have the guts to participate in the election of the next ruler of Tokyo. You must know a lot of big shots, and it's impossible that Soma Munikyo, the commander of the self-defense forces, doesn't know you. Noah continued to play with the gun in his hand and said casually, plus your ambition, it's hard for people not to suspect you, Mr. Ziheng. Just a suspicion? Ziheng Xiani opened his eyes wide. Just a suspicion, and you're sure that I'm you? Even if I'm not sure, so what? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Anyway, in the end, I will definitely catch you and personally take off your hood. Then there's no need for evidence, just suspicion is enough. Ziheng Xiani was immediately speechless. Then Ziheng Xiani laughed again. What a good shelter for the cursed child. Ziheng Xiani laughed in an extremely bleak manner. This time I admit defeat. You are indeed very powerful. Losing to someone like you is not an injustice. As soon as he finished speaking, not an injustice? Noah raised his head and stared at Ziheng Xiani. His pitch-black eyes were filled with an astonishingly cold light. That's right. You're not wronged, but what about the many members of Fairyland who died because of your senseless ambitions? At this moment, an earth-shattering pressure bore down on Ziheng's body, as though gravity had descended from the heavens. Ziheng Xiani held his breath and felt as if he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. A sense of terror rose in his heart. Poor Ziheng Xiani. Although he was the top operatives of the Wuxiang Association, he did not have much combat ability. Suppressed by Noah's aura, Ziheng Xian could not even tremble. He could only watch on with a look of horror in his eyes. The surrounding mechanical soldiers that were firmly bound by the chains of light were also affected. Sensing the terrifying pressure in the air, all the mechanical soldiers looked at Noah in horror. The blood in their faces started to fade bit by bit. As for Zhuoran, who was under Noah's foot and could not even turn around, his face was filled with horror. His whole body was trembling and he almost lost control of his bladder. Then, Noah slowly raised the gun in his hand and pointed it at Ziheng Xiani's head. Ziheng Xiani's pupils shrank to the size of a needle.